Play some music.
All right, you go lay down them funky tracks.
Can you hear it?
Yes. It's great.
Monster surf rock.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love it.
Somebody needs to do like a good Monster Beach movie.
A good one.
I'd be down with that. Yeah, like a really fun one.
Oh, yeah.
I think there's something called Tourist or something that's about people dying on a beach somewhere.
And Brazil.
Yeah,
Brazil. Okay.
Yeah, I did not see that, of course.
I don't think I'm not a gore porn person. I can't really get into like Eli Roth stuff.
Yeah, I remember, well, we can talk about Hostel, but I had just had my daughter, and I was very sensitive to things that I had not realized, and watched it, and I was like, oh, I don't think I can watch horror movies anymore. It was just hormones.
Okay. Looks like we're just about copied over everything that Facebook needs from us, which is great.
I'm putting up the good. I'm waiting for like a good thumbs up from Scott to be like, we're doing it!
We're pumping up. We're pumping up.
There's the ceiling right there. I like to pretend I'm actually in the box.
There you go. Hello, everybody.
Yes.
Welcome to everyone that's out there for the Women in Horror Film Festival, Hellbent for Horror Takeover. It's usually Takeover Thursday, but we're here on a Sunday edition. And I'm so grateful that we have the folks on today that have decided to come on with us. We had a little bit of an issue last time, if anybody remembers. We had a little bit of a problem with our feed from Facebook, but it looks like everything's going just fine. We are up and alive, and I do want to introduce everybody that's here.
Yeah, I think what happened last time is what they call Facebook shit the bed.
Yep, Facebook shit the bed, because we did the exact same thing this time, and look how wonderful it is, and everybody's so happy. So, I did want to introduce our two guests today, wonderful artists and filmmakers and performers in their own right. M. Berger is a writer, director, producer, storyteller, basic white Latina based in Austin, Texas. Her most recent short film, Cleanse, won both Best Supernatural Horror Short at the Women in Horror Film Festival in Atlanta, and will screen at the 2020 Horror House Film Festival in LA this fall. Her collection of weird, trash, punk horror short stories, You'll Never Believe How These Kids Get Murdered, and Other Clickbait Tales, is now available for purchase on Amazon. And we have Xena Dixon. Xena Dixon is your best friend who loves horror movies. She's best known as the real Queen of Horror, and she is the name of her, that is also the name of her over-the-top YouTube channel and websites. Guys, thanks so much for coming on.
Yes,
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, wonderful. And I have to ask, because I wrote a book called Screaming for Pleasure, How Horror Makes You Happy and Healthy. So I love when I hear a good name for a book. So I got to ask, tell me about You'll Never Believe How These Kids Get Murdered and Other Clickbait. Is it a nonfiction, or are you actually telling some stories?
Oh, it is nonfiction. It is a collection of, I think, about 30 1 to 2 page horror stories. I always tell people it's the perfect pooping book, because you can just like sit down, get through a few of them, and then move on with your life.
Yeah.
These days, every book is the perfect pooping book. I have no choice.
It's perfect. There's no, yeah. But yeah, I work in tech. That's how I feed myself and my dog. Aside from, I mean, I'd love for my art to be my full-time job, but right now I work in tech. And so, one of my jobs is I'm a copywriter. And so I just really love those clickbait articles. I always click on them. I always fall for them. And when we were brainstorming titles for the book, I was like, it would be really funny if it was like a clickbaity title. And so that's kind of what we went with. Although it's pretty long, and I had to fight for it because my publisher was like very upset that it was as long as it was. Like, he was like, that's like 10 too many words for a title. He was like, all of your movies are one word titles. Could you just like do that again? And I was like, no, it's really funny. So
yeah, I love it. I'm glad you kept it. I think it's brilliant.
That's so funny. See, my publisher, if you want to call it my publisher, was basically saying we need more words. That's the eye catcher. So it was like screaming for pleasure or how horror makes you happy and healthy, and so it was like good and long. But I was just on a show talking about the book because the host of the other show is a guy who wrote a book called Fat Camp, and so we were talking about the nightmares of writing something that we thought was clever and it got a quick hit from whoever looked at it. It was provocative, and then there was backlash. And so he was like, I'm a guy who's been overweight my whole life. I've always been fat shamed. There's a reason I called it Fat Camp and why the story goes where it goes, but everybody hits me. I can always tell if somebody hasn't even read the book because they hit me for fat shaming and they hit me for stereotypes of women. And it's like, he goes, it's unbelievable how people can go with that. I said, listen, I did Screaming for Pleasure. I fought for the double entendre. I wanted that thing. I thought that was fun. But yes, the first day my book dropped on Amazon, when you looked up Screaming for Pleasure, the first 5 were porn. And then there was me. You had to search for it.
That's so funny because the school shooting stuff was happening around when my book was published. And so actually one of my publishers' critiques was like, are you worried at all that people will think that this is like something to do with that? And I was like, I hope it doesn't come off that way. I haven't had any negative feedback in that way, but yeah, it's definitely not, I don't know. But I also think that in general, like the horror genre is subversive, and we're always towing a line as artists. I think no matter what we do, I think it's very rare to find a piece that's like completely politically correct and completely without any edges on it,
Right.
Well, and I think that takes away from, what you're doing. I mean, especially in horror. I mean, how on earth are you going to get around? I mean, you could come up with anything that someone's going to be like, oh, well, did you think someone might take it this way? Well, they might. I mean, it's subjective. That's not the intent. Read the book.
Yeah. And it's critics. I mean, the critiques of, say, like, I will say that the copy editor and the content editor saved my life. I thought I had a really good book until I went down the path with them. But they're like everything. I had an entire chapter about phobias, where here's some horror movies that you can watch if you have these phobias. And like, you're getting into psychology. People are going to get killed. People are going to die. They're going to watch your movie. They're going to watch a movie and have flashbacks and jump out windows. I'm like, holy shit. And they hit me with, I don't know how many of those little things. So I had to put in the book, listen, this is not a substitute for therapy. Please,
right.
Go get therapy. I'm not telling you eat spiders if you don't like spiders.
Oh, don't do that.
Don't do that. Right. So it was, it's funny how that goes. And Xena, I met Xena down in, was it Texas Frightmare? Was that where it was?
Yes.
Yeah, it was so magnificent. So I have a friend, Brian Martinez, who is also your friend, and
he's the best.
Yeah, he has a great he had a great podcast about Giallo, his Giallo room. I think it ended up getting shut down by not Facebook, but YouTube. And he started a whole new thing, which is really cool. And he's getting a lot of interviews done. But he introduced us, and the first thing that we talked about incredibly non-PC horror films.
Yeah.
Like the one that Vanessa just ended up watching, which was Last House on Dead End Street.
Whoa.
Yes. And
think?
This is what I was telling Scott. So I found it because I was like, where am I going to find this movie? Because, I don't know where stuff is. And it was on Tubi. And I was like, whatever, commercials, it's fine. Well, I started it and I was like, this is really familiar. And then I started thinking about things that happened. And I'm like, I've seen this. Why did I block it? And when and where did I see this film? Because I don't know where. I mean, it had to. My guess is that it may have been around college time, but then I don't know where we would have gotten our hands on it because the internet wasn't really there.
It's interesting that you say that because 2000, I think, was when that movie got quote unquote found again.
Yeah.
Because it was a lost film. One of the things that was really cool about that movie was its urban legend.
It had a different title before, right?
The Funhouse. It was also called The Funhouse. But Last House on Dead End Street is the one that most of us knew because that's the one that kind of went out. But it was notorious. It only played a couple places. It played around my hometown.
It's messed up. It's not for the faint of heart.
No. And every year it gets worse. Every year, if I watch it, I'm like going, oh, ooh.
Yeah.
It's
It
just,
sticks with you in a weird way.
it's a very harsh film. It's a very
Yeah.
harsh film. But Xena, tell us a little bit. You've done, let's see, a couple short films now, right? I remember seeing one that you did, was it 2 years ago or was it just a
It's
year
about
ago?
2 years ago.
2 years ago, which was really, really cool. And
Yes.
you're doing a lot of journalism, horror journalism, you poor,
Right.
poor person. You. How's that going? And where are you being read now?
So I'm sort of transitioning out of journalism. So I used to write for Dread Central. I had a monthly column. It was called Xena's Period Blood. It was great. It was about just underrated horror gems. I talked about
Yeah.
Pen, and Pen is my life.
Oh, yes. We can talk
Pen
then.
is everything. Yes. So, so just talked about those different ones. So I'm transitioning out because now I'm creating like YouTube content, video content. I'm a little bit hard on myself when it comes to films with me even putting it out. So 2 years ago, I filmed this short called She, and it's about these women who like to play a game. It's literally like under 2 minutes. And, I finished that like probably 5 months before I even ever thought about putting it out. I don't know what it is. I just get nervous about doing that. So with YouTube as an example, it's easier for me just to sit in front of a camera and just yell about horror movies,
Yeah.
So basically I just talk about, lists, like horror lists. Like recently I did a list on like top four-legged pets in horror, like lists that I would like to see. And it also helps me keep track of the movies that I watch, because I watch a lot of horror movies. And, instead of keeping like a letterbox or keeping a notebook like I used to do, because I always end up losing it and who knows where it is, So it just helps me keep track of like the different movies that I watch.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to speak on something because I think this is a really common thing among filmmakers. Maggie, I'm sure you can attest to this too, but that kind of sense of anxiety of putting something out there, especially after being a voice of someone who is, reporting, critiquing, talking about other films, and then you put something of your own. I think that's always a scary thing. It's very vulnerable. I mean, you're putting your art out there, and
Right.
hopefully it's received well, but again, it's subjective. There's going to be at least a couple of bad reviews, and it's always like,
Of course.
okay, I just got to brace myself for it.
Yeah. Well, honestly, I'm surprised how often critics and journalists end up making films and it works. I mean, we don't
Mhm.
hear about the ones that it doesn't work, but I mean, Dario Argento in horror is a huge one. And Paul Schrader, Francois Truffaut, the guys that created Cahiers du Cinema, they were all critics. So Godard, all those
Mhm.
guys started out as film critics and then went on to kind of change the medium. So it's really interesting. I don't know how you get over that kind of thing, because I get nervous about it. I have no problem. Well, I can't say I didn't have any problem writing a book. It's hard writing a book about your opinions. But filming something, I get super hypercritical because I just know so many movies. And
Yeah.
I don't know how you don't become self-referential. And I don't know how you keep from unconsciously making someone else's movie and going, oh, God, I just made somebody else's movie. It's a nightmare.
And I feel like I kind of, when I create the shorts, it's kind of like selfish. And I'm sure that Maggie can possibly agree that, it's kind of more of, things that I would like to see. But with me putting them out there, like I used to just constantly would just film like a short movie under like 3 minutes, like every weekend, edit it during the week and then put it out, like have like friends and family kind of like critique it. But you guys know how it is. Sometimes they don't want to hurt your feelings. And it's just like,
Right.
no, tell me, So, but now it's like, I want to be able to also just take a step back and like really critique it myself. But then I also find that I'm also, you know how it is. Sometimes you with your own creations, it can kind of be like, well, maybe I could do this over. Just start to kind of like nitpick, if that makes sense.
I also want to take just a moment for to say hello to anybody who's watching us on the Facebook Live page. I don't know if you're seeing anything, Vanessa. I'm not seeing any comments or that anybody's in here
Oh,
because I
I
moved to the
am.
new Facebook, and the new Facebook's just telling me to go
I
below me.
moved to the new Facebook too, and it's I'm not used to it yet, and it's hard. I do see people. Yes, we've got people viewing and saying hello. There's Susie and Nathan, Carrie, Rick. Who else do we have in here? Waylon Jordan is with us.
Yay!
Yes. Oh, and Nathan actually just asked. He wants a link to Xena's YouTube page. If you stick it in our chat, I can copy and paste over there if somebody wants to check it out. Lisa's Perez is here. Yeah, and then Susie mentioned back with phobias that she had a phobia of spiders, and now she has 2 pet tarantulas. So,
Wow.
yay for conquering some phobias. I would not do that. I'm not ready for tarantulas.
That's so funny.
Christopher G. Moore is with us too.
Oh, wonderful! Yeah,
and John Arminio. Yeah, everybody's here. The party's
everybody's in. The ceremony is about to begin. But yeah, I had the same problem with spiders. I think I may have mentioned this before. I had pretty bad arachnophobia because when I was about 12, I got covered from head to toe with daddy long legs. I was helping move and they're not even real spiders. And
oh no, they're real.
Much for me. And I was just helping a tree surgeon. I went around this leafy tree and this wall of ivy, and I got on the other side. And I'm like, I'm having a hard time seeing. And then I looked down. It's just like a wall of these things. I just went right over.
How do you guys feel though about like walking through spider webs? Like no spider, just the web. Can you handle it?
I'm okay now.
I can do it.
It grosses me out, but I'm okay. Once I became a homeowner, I got really simpatico with spiders because they eat termites and stuff. So it was like, I don't know, I kind of got over it, but what really did it is when I moved out here, there's a place called Mount Diablo. And on Mount Diablo, every October, first week or second week of October, the tarantulas come out and mate. So they come out like the mops in Fantasia. Dun, 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 dun.
Wow.
And you just see them, you're like, fuck. And so I ended up going there and I get video of them and I let them walk on my shoes. And, so, and just like that, I got over arachnophobia because tarantulas are different. It's the ones that aren't furry and have like the big back and they're like, no, those things.
I have to change the subject.
Yeah.
What about you, Maggie? Can you walk through spider webs?
Yeah, I actually have never been scared of spiders or tarantulas. That's never been my thing.
What's your thing?
My thing is, well, my bug, I have a lot of things. Obviously, like dying alone by myself, isolated is like everyone's thing. But my bug thing, and like in the category of fears, my bug thing is roaches. I don't like those. I grew up in a home in Texas, which it's Texas, and in Texas in the rainy season, you just know that like there are roaches everywhere. There's nothing. It's not about cleanliness. It's about living in Texas. Georgia is like that too. They're huge. So and they're massive. They're the tree ones, so they're like the massive ones. Ooh. Yeah, and so I grew up with those, and I remember the first time I lived alone. It was my very first time living in Austin, and I was in college. I was going to UT. And I remember a cockroach was in my bedroom, and I just remember sitting on the floor and crying because no one would come over to kill it for me. So after about an hour of like really just like pumping myself up, I managed to put a cup over it and take it outside. And it was like my triumph. Like I remember like just like screaming afterwards, I did it.
Well, I didn't take it outside, but did you see, I posted recently on Facebook a picture because there was a cockroach in my house and I put a glass over it and left a note for whoever was coming home to please get rid of it. I paid my daughter $10 to put the cup on it because I couldn't get that close to it.
Xena, you're down in Tampa. I remember being down in Florida.
House cats. They're the size of house cats there.
Palmetto bugs. The palmettos were what I remember. These vicious flying cockroaches that go right at your head. And they used to have like back in the 80s when I was down there for a military thing. And they had these. It looked like a huge orange stick of dynamite. It was a spray can that was made specifically for palmetto bugs. And it was like, they said, don't put that on yourself. Whatever you do, don't let it drip on you. Nothing like that. But you can hit these things and you hit them and they go, oh, you motherfucker, and then they fly at you and then die before they got to you. But I was scared of
Yeah, the
Oh.
fact that they fly. Oh, I can't. Oh, I can't.
Too much.
Like,
A lot of
I'm-
people talking about bugs. We've got the chats going bananas. Waylon said for him it's snakes. He cannot see them on television or a movie without freaking out. Jason Bradford said the spider that drops down in front of you while driving your car on the freeway is the most dangerous kind of spider. I will agree. I had a spider come out of the vent.
Mm.
And
Oh
I
my
mean, I
gosh.
almost wrecked the car. I had to pull over and we got out and I was like, I'm not getting back in until it's gone. I can't do it.
You want to really be happy? If you have an iPhone, go, "Hey Siri," and then say, "How many spiders do you eat in a lifetime in your sleep?"
Too many, I bet. Is it?
Well, one is too many, right? I mean,
Yeah, well.
it's not like,
Oh.
I just don't have enough spider in my diet. That's why I'm so run down. Can someone just bring a brown
I am
recluse over?
so gonna have a nightmare tonight. Bugs are my thing. Like, I mean, I have a lot of fears. It's crazy that I even enjoy horror because I'm scared of everything. But bugs for sure are way high on the list of stuff. Like, I cannot walk through a spider web. I'll go in the backyard with sticks and I walk around like I'm, I don't know, a witch doing something. Like, I'm sure my neighbors just think I'm insane, but I have to make sure that there is no way possible I will walk into one. I'll freak out. I'll die.
It's so crazy because, as ignorant as this sounds, like, I didn't know that they were flying roaches. So when I moved to Tampa, I remember my husband telling me that. I'm like, whatever, I can handle that. What, And so one day I was minding my own business and I was like, wow, that's a really like big fly. What is that? And it wasn't. It landed. I've never in my life, like the way I screamed, like you would think that somebody was trying to kill me. I couldn't handle it.
Where
And
did
then,
it land?
Oh, thank God. No, it landed
Where?
like on the counter somewhere, not near me, And then there was another time I was working and I used to work at like at a hotel, and in front of a guest, one just landed on the counter. I kindly picked up my things and left. Don't know what happened. Don't know if the guest ever saw. I just
Kindly.
like I'm not gonna like just
Ugh.
Oh, I would have, and I have no control, and I would have no memory of doing it. Like something happens in my brain, and I just spin out of control. I will break shit and push people over. I'm gone, and then I won't have any memory that it happened. I'll be like, was there a bug involved? Probably.
Well, it's like when people try to like freak you out. They want to gross you out, and somebody will come up and go, "Hey, essay, you do this whole thing. What about if you fell into a vat of it?" Just like, stop. I don't need to hear what it is. If I fall in a vat of anything, I'm not going to be happy. It's going to be a horrifying
There's
thing.
all kinds of pleasant vats.
Pleasant. I always remember there was you remember the Smothers Brothers? This is an old group, but they used to have these comedians who were folk singers as well. They'd play as if they were folk singers. And they had this song once, which was one of the guys would go, "I fell into a vat of chocolate. I fell into a vat of chocolate." And then his brother would go, "What did you say when you fell into the chocolate? Lolly-doo-dum day." He goes, "I yelled, 'Help!' when I fell into the chocolate. I yelled, 'Help!' And that would be me. Doesn't matter. Chocolate.
I'm okay in the chocolate.
Yeah, like
Fine.
that'll be fine.
Yeah.
Falling into a vat of chocolate. How
Yeah.
deep is the vat, I guess, is the question I have to ask.
Can you swim through it? I mean, as long as I don't drown, I'm okay. I'll eat it.
Waiting. This is the new Stephen King, the small horror Stephen King. Guy falls in the Nestle plant and he's just left there alone
that's
all
totally
night.
fine. Vat of roaches? No.
Yeah.
Vat of chocolate?
No.
It's open water meets the Snickers bar. It's perfect. It's writing itself.
Or like those foam cubes at the places when you jump off the trampoline. That's fine. A vat of those. I'm okay.
Vat. Where are we going to put all these? Well, we have this spare vat. Take those foamy things.
Am I the only one with a basement full of vats?
Yeah, that's right. You have a great place right there.
Yeah, just a quick
Come
question.
visit.
Mhm. Yeah.
Since we were talking about spiders, do you guys like the movie Arachnophobia?
Yes.
Yeah,
I love
Yes.
that movie.
I love
It's
it.
a great movie.
Yeah,
I
it's-
think it infuses comedy, I think, brilliantly. It's a good starter movie for, I think, kids. That was the first one I showed my kids because they're not really into horror, but they were getting curious and it was Halloween. And I'm like, we could show this one. It's not, it's fine. It's tame. It's creepy, but it's not. I love it. Yeah.
Well, that's a
Good one.
great one because I had arachnophobia when that came out, and I had watched other ones, Giant Spider Invasion and things like that, and they completely creeped me out. Even though it's Giant Spider Invasion, everything in that is so fake. But arachnophobia worked because so much of it was CG, and the type of spiders that I looked up what they were, and they were not non-venomous, but those really big ones. And just the way that they moved and everything was not how I knew spiders to move. And so it helped give me that distance that it didn't freak me out. And I was like, okay, yeah, cool. So that was one of the things that was like a gateway to me getting out of arachnophobia. I went there with the entire intent of being, grossed out, but also like immersion therapy, and it kind of worked. And I see Film Deviant is here, yes, and the Giant Spider Invasion is brought up. I remember seeing that movie, and I have it somewhere on VHS. Obviously, I don't think it made it to Blu-ray, but the Giant Spider Invasion was the one where they had Volkswagens, and they just put these giant spider bodies on the Volkswagens and rolling down hills. But it had this two incredibly creepy scenes. One, which is a farmer gets eaten by the giant spider while a church revival is going on, and they're intercutting like about the resurrection and Armageddon, and there's blood pouring down this guy's face as he's upside down, and these two little mandibles are like sticking him in, and the idea of him being inside a giant spider was so fucking gross to me. And then there was one where there were tarantulas in this woman's house, and she's making, of course, a blended drink, and tarantula falls into blender, goes into the blended drink. She goes, and I'm just
chewy.
Like, yeah, just the thought of what spider would taste like pureed was enough for me. But those,
I hear they taste like crab.
Really?
Of course.
Yeah.
Where did you hear that from?
Yeah.
So I was watching Bizarre Foods with Andrew Zimmern, and he had a Halloween episode, and they were doing the fried tarantulas, and people were eating them, and I was like watching going,
Yeah.
But yeah, they were like, oh, it kind of tastes like crab.
Remember that
like,
when you're going to, those off-title delis and things, you go the all-you-can-eat buffets. Like,
jumbo
actually spider.
Have the crab. And you're like,
In Mexico, it's like street food, crickets. Like,
Yes.
they have like all the crickets, and then they put like the different like seasonings in them. And I just have never, my cousins always make fun of me because obviously I have cousins in Mexico. And but yeah, they always make fun of me that I can't
Have you
eat
tried them?
but I just can't. I just can't. My brain can't fathom putting something that was once alive and has little antennae and little feet, and then feeling the texture of that in my mouth sounds horrible.
yeah.
It is horrible. I did try them on a dare, and I was like, I mean, I'm a grown ass woman, but I didn't look like one eating this thing. I was crying. My lip was quivering. I was like, I don't know if I can do it. What if I throw up? We're in public. But yeah, I ate it, and I was crunching. I was doing the yeah, but it didn't taste like what I thought. Like, it really just tasted like a I don't
Paper.
know, like yeah. I mean, it was crunchy. It had the texture of just like a crunchy salad topper.
Yeah.
That was kind of salty and
Yeah.
peppery, but I knew
Yeah,
that it
that's
had
what it
the
is.
legs and the wings.
That's what it is. That's what it is. It's the knowing that it was a bug and it's now in your mouth.
Yeah, it's great to
Put
be.
that shit on everything.
Yeah, I get to be gross guy because I was in the military and I had to eat a few things, sometimes officially and sometimes on my own, just for the fun of it. But
Yeah.
I had grasshoppers, worms.
How were the worms?
thick, bigger than you want them to be?
Oh, that's not
No.
how you describe the taste of a food.
Yeah, it was like
How was it?
it wasn't
Thick.
great. It wasn't great because they're
Oh,
not
I
only
would think it would
slimy.
taste like dirt a little bit because they eat.
Oh,
Well, they're earthy, yeah.
Have you guys seen or did you eat one of those like live octopi, like in Japan, how they eat the live like
No.
squid? Have you
No.
seen those videos?
I have,
Oh,
and
they're
No,
so
it scares me
it's
because of
kind
the
of,
suckers.
but it's kind of satisfying to watch other people eat it.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. Like I would never, but there's this one. Is that the one with a woman that's in it, and she's like really going in there when she's just biting into it and sucking on. It's just like
no. The one I saw was it was an older man, and it's like it's like a family dinner, and he just like takes it from something, puts it on his plate, cuts it at some point, he like cuts it and then he just slurps it, and it's like still kicking as he's slurping it, and I was just like, my brain exploded. Like I was like, I had no idea that this was happening in the world right now. Like I didn't need to know.
Well, at least it's not part of like a weird, like I had the not great pleasure of seeing a horror film where this guy, for some weird fucking reason, had a squid on his head or an octopus on his head, and he was using it to purposely vomit. This was
I know what you're talking about.
There was a movie where it was vomit fetish, I guess. Horror meets vomit fetish. And so this guy's just walking around. He looks like an idiot first off, no matter what. He's just this dumpy guy with glasses, and he's got
a slimy octopus.
He's just like grabbing the tentacle, going just to throw up. I'm like, and it was just this weird ritualistic thing. So if you can eat it, that's one thing. But I don't know. I try not
alive. It's the fact that it's alive.
Right.
It's alive.
I eat sushi. I eat
thing.
sashimi, but eating live is.
I'm concerned
dead
about the living thing burrowing or trying to get out. We've all seen the movies where something gets ingested and then it, and there's a Instagram account called, I think, Nature is Metal. Do you guys know this?
Yeah.
No.
Awesome.
It's a subreddit. It's a subreddit.
The duck is flying and the eel is coming out of its chest because it swooped down and swallowed it whole, and then it came out.
I've seen some of those videos. I've seen some of that.
So that's what's gonna happen if I eat
Hardcore.
like alive anything. I'll be like, what is this?
You are taking a chance, and that's why it's good to have a good pooping book around.
Search Full Circle. Buy my book. And then later, when you're pooping out the gross things that you've decided to eat, you'll have a book to keep you company.
Yeah, it's the addendum book.
Yeah, I was thinking about it though, because you were saying something about like how folks were giving you guff about the title to your book, Scott, and I was thinking like the title of my book is the least offensive thing about my book. Like the opening short story is about the Grand Canyon full of a bunch of bodies that are all having sex and eating each other, and so like if you can't get past the title, you're not going to make it through the book. So
this
maybe it does
clickbait?
pair well. Yeah, I think it pairs very well with eating live octopi. Is what I'm saying.
This is that's some amazing clickbait. The clickbait I actually click on is really not doing the work that it needs to keep up with that. I've never heard of the Grand Canyon full of sex bodies that are eating each other. There's something new every day, and somebody's going to believe that. That's what's amazing. Somebody's going to believe that.
Someone will.
Before we go
have
to
I was going to say we have a question.
Oh, good.
From Film Deviant. Hey Scott, you're wearing a The Thing shirt. What are your thoughts on that new remake Carpenter and company are working on?
Well, it's so funny that I get asked that question because I was just on another show today, and I was talking about Misery. And
I was going to say, were you wearing the shirt? Yes,
I was actually. I didn't change between shows. I'm not a prima donna, but I haven't even brushed my teeth. No, but the thing. The thing was, I was asked about Misery because we were talking about Misery, and they said, do you think it could be remade, or what do you think of remakes? And I've always said that remakes are the best chance that a story has of being good redone, because I don't really like sequels, because sequels are constantly always like a photocopy of a photocopy. The more that they go along, the more they kill the story. They have to, especially in horror, because in horror, most of it is about fear of the unknown. Most of it is about not knowing what's coming. And before you know it, you didn't make it through Halloween 2 before you have Michael Myers and Jamie Lee Curtis, our brother and sister, and all of that stuff. The things that you start to learn are denaturing the horror, and they also play towards fans, right? So they tend to give fans satisfaction, and that's not necessarily very metal. That's not what horror is about. Horror is about upsetting the apple cart. And so when people say that I really liked all the sequels of my favorite slasher because it's like comfort food, I'm like, that's not what horror is supposed to be. It's not supposed to be a nice cup of soup. So
it's not a bag of Cheetos.
But yeah, right. But
I like Cheetos.
Remakes, on the other hand, I think remakes are just as bad as all of the slashers that there were. You were literally watching remakes in the 80s. You just didn't know it. They were remakes of the movie that opened last week. It's the same slasher over and over and over again, which means that there's always trash. There's always an overpopulation of something because the people who get involved with this are trying to get out volume and they're trying to get out product. And every so often you have something magnificent that happens. And those magnificent things happen to be 1982, The Thing, 1987, The Fly, 1988, The Blob, in that time period for the 80s, which is considered a great time. It is a great time for horror, but it was also a time where there was a lot of shit, and there was a ton of it because it was the mass producing for VHS, which suddenly became the thing. Home video markets opened up. So yes, there's a ton of terrible remakes, but I think when a remake hits, it can be magnificent. I don't think The Thing's going to be one that can be, even with Carpenter and everybody involved, because I don't know where you're going to go with it. But it might be, because even when I was saying, no, we don't need a Misery remake, and then I was like, well, wait a second, what am I talking about? I mean, it can't be that movie, but why couldn't, we're talking about a woman who has a guy tied down in a bed, basically. Yeah. And it's because of his hubris that he's there.
Well, what do you guys,
right? And so I think The Thing could have talked to something now. I mean, The Thing talked perfectly about what was happening in the Reagan 80s, right? And that's why everybody hated it, because it was very honest about where we were going in paranoia. What could The Thing be about now that would be exciting? So I think the question is, what is there that is worthy of The Thing being remade into it? I will always have a soft spot in my heart for the original, well, not the original, the remake, original remake of The Thing from
the Carpenter Thing,
the Carpenter Thing. But I also believe it could go somewhere.
What do you guys think? I mean, how do you guys feel about remakes in general? Because I feel like, especially in recent years, there's been a lot of, we're calling them reboots now, right? Is that the new term for a remake? How do you guys
reimagined?
Well, let me ask you something about that, because do you think there's a difference between something that's reimagined where they're changing a lot of what's going on, but it's kind of under the umbrella of the original story, versus an actual kind of remake of everything down the line?
I feel like it's the same thing, just being honest with you. And overall, it's kind of like, I don't mind remakes. I used to be that person that was just like, oh no, they're remaking this. No, without even seeing the trailer, without even seeing a poster, without even hearing the synopsis, it's just like, no. But I find, for some people, it's a good way for new fans to discover it, and then most likely they'll go back and, check it out.
True.
So now I don't mind. When it comes to the remake of The Thing, kind of like what Scott said, what more could they do? Like, what direction are they going to go in? I'm curious about it, but I'm not like dismissive. And even when it comes to like sequels, I think it depends on the sequels. There are some sequels that are not so great. It's like, why is this happening? But then there are some that I think are really great. Like one of my favorites, Kevin Tenney's Witchboard 2. Like that movie's my jam.
Yeah.
So, I love that movie. And then even when I think about Ouija, Origin of Evil, the sequel, I prefer the sequel over the first one, and even Evil Dead 2. So I think it just depends on which ones you're talking about.
Right.
I don't think there's any across the board thing, right?
Yeah. I'll ask this, Maggie, we'll see what you think. Is there anything that you feel is like untouchable though? Like it should not be touched. It's perfect as is. It captures that moment. Don't touch it.
No. But the reason why I say that is because for me, going to see a remake or a remaster or a reboot or a sequel, like any of whatever the words are, I always have I go to see those movies to re-fall in love with the original. I don't go to see those movies with the expectation that I'm going to see the next Get Out, that I'm going to see the next Midsommar, that I'm going to see the next like groundbreaking, amazing film that's going to, honestly, I hate to say this kind of like a jab, but that I'm not going to go see the next film that's going to inspire my next piece. I go, like, the last 2 It movies happened the same weekend of my birthday, which is Labor Day weekend. And damn right, I made all of my friends go to the movie theater and watch the It movies with me. Like, yes, I made them come over beforehand and watch the original with me. And like, I think that it was a fun thing for all of us to do. And yeah, it was cool to see Pennywise in a different light with his weird dancing and his crazy, like, I loved it. I was like, why the fuck not? But like, I didn't go to see it remade with the expectation that like suddenly it was going to be the thing that like knocked everything loose in my brain and the writer's block would be gone. And now I was ready to make my next, like, it's not inspirational, it's nostalgic and it's fun. And I think that I understand that, I don't know, it feels like, I think there's a little tiny bit of resentment in my heart though when it comes to sequels and remakes, because there's that teeny tiny piece of me that's like, that's a slot that a really amazing indie person who created a brand new amazing story that no one's ever heard of before, that's a slot that they didn't get because you went safe. So there is a little bit of that in my heart. But I mean, yeah, I'll go watch The Thing.
Yeah, I think sequels are a writer's medium. They satisfy the writer. They don't really satisfy the director. They may satisfy an actor if an actor wants to come back to it. I think remakes are for storytellers, whether it be visual, whether it be the director or the writer. I think the director really has an opportunity to do something really interesting with a remake. And I will say that there are several that I was just talking to somebody about. Hills Have Eyes. Like the Aj remake of Hills Have Eyes, if you put that with Cravens and you somehow splice them together and color time them, if you take the best out of both of them, you have a perfect horror film. But both of them are really problematic. They have issues, you know, and yet I wouldn't decry having the remake, because the remake really punches home the idea that there is like this almost biblical original sin to the desert. We went out there and threw a couple atom bombs out there, and we left people, we destroyed people in other countries, but we also destroyed our own land, and it was the beginning of us opening a Pandora's box. And that's something that's kind of hinted at in the original, but they're explicit about it in the second one, and I think that was a lot of fun. The remake of Dawn of the Dead, I know that that's derisive for some people. I loved it. I was like really like, wow, because I went in wanting to hate it. One of my favorite horror films of all time, the one that was actually legitimized by Siskel and Ebert and go fuck themselves. Whoever was always against the horror films, they finally liked one. They said it was great satire, and we had St. George saving us from looking like a bunch of knuckle draggers. And I was like, no, you cannot do this movie. And then I watched the first 5 minutes of it. I went, I am wrong. This is an amazing. I will say that Zack Snyder does great openings to his films. I don't know if he knows how to close them, but he does a fantastic job of grabbing you with amazing visuals and ideas in the first 15 minutes of a film. And I was like, this is damn near perfect. And what was great is that it was like great satire because it wasn't satire. Zack Snyder already knew that the ship had left, or no, not Zack. The writer was, oh my goodness, he's gone on to do a whole bunch of really great stuff too. I can't remember the writer of that film, but it was a great screenplay. And basically he said, yeah, this is the new normal. They're just walking around like the mall's the perfect place. They're having little dramas, little Hallmark moments and stuff. And it's just funny because it's like, yeah, that's what we do. We ignore the problem. We just keep ignoring the problem. So
So we are getting a lot of comments, but I will pull out one question since we're talking about remakes. John Ferris wanted to know for everybody, what is your favorite remake? Do you have a favorite?
Somebody else go first. I have to think about
I
that.
have to think about it.
Yeah.
Well, we can.
James
I mean,
Gunn.
I guess
James Gunn was the writer. That's it, of the Dawn of the Dead remake. James Gunn. Thank you.
I will say, actually, I was the first to be like, don't call on me. But then, of course, I thought of one. I would say I honestly really, really loved the Evil Dead remake. Like,
that's another great one.
I thought it was so freaking creepy. But to this day, I still will tell friends about the nail gun scene where you just hear it. It's the sound design is beautiful. You hear it in the background, like the and then she comes out holding it with nails in her face. It's perfect. Like, that's such a beautiful moment. So I would definitely say Evil Dead remake. And since you were really quickly talking about sequels, I mean, obviously Exorcist 3, like everybody loves Exorcist 3.
Now.
You know what I mean? And also, and the last thing I'll say really quickly, if someone came to me and was like, Maggie, do you want to direct the Exorcist remake? I'd be like, of course I want to direct the Exorcist remake. Like, I'm not going to fight you on that, you know? Like, I get it. I get why people take those jobs. Be great.
Well, and I think that's the thing. I mean, I think it's really easy sometimes to sit and be like, oh, it's sacrilege. You don't touch that film. But then someone comes around, hey, filmmaker, you want to?
Hey.
Yes,
I'd be
I'll
like,
do that.
Of course.
I will
happily
kick its ass.
Yeah. Well, it's like John Carpenter. And, my first thought, and still my same thought, is that probably my favorite is the remake of The Thing that John Carpenter did, because it was so... it galvanized me. I saw it in the theaters when it came out. And then I also saw how it changed everything, right? But Carpenter, depending upon what interview you hear, he either was given The Thing and he didn't want to do it, or he was given the thing and he didn't want to do the old story. Whichever way it was, it wasn't his idea initially, but it seemed perfect, for my dad, who was a Carpenter fan, because Carpenter was like this bridge between the two generations. He was just cool enough, and he was just classy enough for the older generation to like him. He didn't have a lot of tits and ass and over amounts of blood and stuff in his movies early on. And so it seemed like the perfect match, but he didn't think so. And so you had someone who was studious and loved film, and he was given this assignment and he said, I'm not going to do the same thing. And I think right there, you're on your way to either something fantastic or something horrifying. And he went back to the original story. And so that was really, it was so different than what the original film was, that it almost doesn't feel like it should be called The Thing. And yet it should be called The Thing more than the Howard Hawks one. And so it's really, I think that's why it's my favorite. And I think that what you're saying about taking the job, I think if you go at it the right way, and you're excited by it, I almost would think that it's almost better to have it land in your lap and then you have to think out of the box, than to be, I've always wanted to do a remake. Like, I want to do a remake of The Car, the old 1977 movie.
That's such a great movie.
Yeah. I just have this whole thing of how to contemporize it.
Do it.
Yeah. Well, I have to write it. Yeah. But
it.
it's, so I want to do it.
We'll support you.
It'll probably blow because I want to do it. But I think if you have something where they throw it at you and say, do The Town That Dreaded Sundown, that's a fantastic remake. If anybody hasn't seen it, go watch that. That's meta. It's so great because it works in the universe where the original 1976 film actually exists. They talk about it. They go into not only that movie, but also the real life stuff that happened and the urban legend that came out of that. So it's like a three-pronged attack of this film. And it's so smart and so clever and violent. I mean, it does what the original did. I think we remember The Town That Dreaded Sundown so much because it was like a Sun International picture. They were Boggy Creek and stuff. They weren't that great, but this one was super violent. Dawn Wells gets shot in the face. And it was something that was really brutal for the time period. And when they remade it, that was there. I don't think those guys grew up going, I think The Town That Dreaded Sundown just has to be remade. I think that landed in somebody's lap. I could be wrong, but I think that when you're not married to it, I think you might think a little bit more energetically about it and imaginative.
Well, and speaking of remakes, I just recently watched the original Black Christmas
Oh,
because
I love it. Love
had
it.
never seen it. Surprise, surprise. But I do know that it has been remade twice since. I think once in 2006 and then once just recently, right? Like 2018, 2019. I've not seen those. I don't know if anybody has and wants to chime in, but I was telling Scott the other day, like, I am a huge When a Stranger Calls fan. And so watching Black Christmas, I was like, oh, this is the first movie to have the call came from inside the house, because I always thought it was When a Stranger Calls. And then I was like, oh, well, I've been losing trivia and I had no idea.
There's so many firsts in that movie. I mean,
Yeah.
really, it's way ahead of its time. And we talked about this before, so I won't belabor it, but it's the tone. The tone is so great. There's very little incidental music in it. They go with the sound of winter and wind and silences, and there's a grumpiness. There's this loneliness and resentfulness that people have. They're stuck outside of Christmas alone. There's that whole idea of the sacred of Christmas, but there's a kid missing. All of that. So, and even the goofy character isn't your normal goofy character. The sergeant, forgetting the desk sergeant's name now, but the whole fellatio thing, and that he does.
Right.
Even with that, he's not as dumb as most of the dumb cops that are seen in movies of that time period, where they make them into Keystone Cops. Here, he's just the dim-witted one, and John Saxon's character has a sensibility to him. There's the parents. There's that whole thing of where parents are just feeling that their kids are slipping out of their control, where the missing daughter, the parents come, and there's all the sex posters and everything, and he's so uncomfortable. You can see the dad's dying inside, that he already feels he's lost his daughter. Now he may have literally lost her. There's just so much that's good in that film, and it's dark, and it ends dark, and it's such a 70s film. It's one of the few horror films. I would say Communion or Alice Sweet Alice is another one that's creepiness factor is immense. Yeah. Rest in power, John Saxon. Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Losing another
I would
one.
love to see an
some
Alice
coffee.
Sweet Alice. I'd love to see an Alice Sweet Alice remake, like selfishly. I think because it's also very like topical. Xena, I did want to hear your favorite remake though, if you have one, if you've thought of one.
Yeah, I did, like while we were talking. So kind of like what happened with you. Well, two came to mind. 13 Ghosts. It's a really fun one.
Yes.
I love it.
Would agree.
It's really fun, and that one, the Jackal, oh my God, nightmares for life.
Yeah.
Then another one that comes to mind is Maniac from 2012.
Ooh,
Elijah Wood.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yes, I was really surprised, and this actually made me stop being like, oh, these remakes, because I remember I heard about it, and like I'm a really big fan of the original one. I thought there's no way he can do what Joe did. No way, And within, honestly, the first 10 minutes, I was hooked, and it's like a favorite of mine.
That's
two comments. Waylon just jumped in. First, he said they're working on the Alice Sweet Alice remake. It's been on again, off again. And then John Ferris said, Vanessa, Dad did it first. Creepy horror film. Check it out. Called When Michael Calls.
I was about to say full stop on the conversation. I remember When Michael Calls, and it's the idea is
John, get your dad in here.
A dead child calls the mom. This is Michael. And that's the beginning of it, and where it goes. I mean, it's. I watched it. When Michael Calls, it was like what 6 years, 1972. It's like 6 years before Halloween. But there's this really creepy scene with I believe a Halloween. I think it's a creepy Halloween pageant that happens where there's a death. And so it has this real Halloween feel. So I always thought when Michael calls, you know, the idea of Michael being Michael Myers, I know that Michael Myers was named after the guy who put Assault on Precinct 13 in England. So it's not the same, but it always hit me as the name Michael being this creepy thing, even though it's the archangel and all of that. It just had this Halloween vibe. And there is this whole thing where it starts with this weird phone call, and then it just gets stranger and stranger. It's very thriller-esque, and it's worth seeing. It's worth seeing. I remember when I was watching it as a kid. So, by the way, Xena, those are great choices.
It's so much creepier, I think, to have been able to play with technology back then when it was still kind of new. Like, that is not something we can do today. It's not like the text came from upstairs. Like, you can't, like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like everything is in a way that, like, there are cameras everywhere. There is, I mean, you can't get away with anything. So to me, I think that era did such a great job of utilizing the technology that was there at the time to really send shivers down your spine, because you had to physically be somewhere to do that, right? If the call was, I mean, they're in your house.
Well, there's that
Did
great
y'all-
moment in Black Christmas where they're trying to get to the phone bay. They're in the old analog phone system. They're like looking for the clicky thing. We don't know what the fuck it is, but we already know.
Yeah, we're like,
the
well,
clicky thing.
he's in the house. Get the clicky. Maggie, what were you going to say?
I was just thinking about like movies that using today's technology. Did y'all get a chance to see that movie with it's the guy who plays Harold, and Harold and Kumar go to White Castle, and he's a father, and it's like all from a computer screen, and he's a father whose daughter is missing.
Oh, that's right. I did not see it.
So I watched it, and I remember I went into it. It was one of those movies. Okay, so I have a really bad thing to admit. Sometimes when there's a movie that I know that I have to see, but I'm not really excited to see it, I will double screen, and I will have my phone out, and I am
filmmaker,
doing that thing.
artist.
I know.
Holy shit.
Shame on me. But so I was doing that with this movie because a friend of mine had sent me the name and was like, "It's amazing. It deserved all the awards it got. Please watch it." And so I was like, I had my phone out, and I was like, I'll be able to tell her that I saw it, and I'll be able to have a conversation about it. But it was one of those movies where I was double screening, and within the first 5 minutes, I put my phone down and started watching. And I definitely don't think it was like breakthrough or anything. I know that there's like that there's that other movie that did it first. I can't remember, with the killer and the ghost. Unfriended, yeah. But it was engaging. Like, I was worried that it was gonna feel long, and that I was going to get bored, and that it was just going to be like, it was just, the trick was that it was on a computer screen, and I was going to be like, okay, I get it. But it was actually very engaging, very well written. I recommend it. It was pretty good.
Well, I would recommend, we talked about both of those films recently, me and somebody else, because I watched Host.
Yeah, well,
the
speaking of Host, literally, Nathan Leaflight just said, Vanessa just reminded me, has anyone shot a Zoom horror film yet, where something horrible happens to one of the participants, or maybe where the Zoom freezes on some disturbing? Is he messing with us, or are these real questions? Host is all Zoom.
Yeah.
There's actually a couple of movies like that comes to mind. Open Windows, The Den, The Gallows 2, kinda.
Really?
Well, kinda.
Xena, you are just a walking encyclopedia. Do you just have your brain printed for me to download and read?
No, I was actually just thinking about that, because I love movies like that. So those were in mine. And I don't know if you guys seen this one. It came out maybe, I want to say maybe 4 years ago, Radar. The girl from Pretty Little Liars, Ashley Benson, she's starring in it. And there's like a hacker who's watching her through her laptop, through her Wii. It's just a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know if I saw that one. I know I didn't see it. So
I guess that kind of speaks to my point, is we've found a creative way to utilize today's technology and find kind of that what's the word I'm looking for? The open space to get in and make it scary.
Yes.
Because especially in the very beginning, when web cams were a brand new thing. I mean, to me, the scariest thing would be talking to somebody and then the other person being like, what's behind you?
Well, that's one of my favorite scenes. It's not a movie that is all about it, but the beginning of The Pact, the original The Pact, where they're going to the mother has died and the daughter is at the house, but she wants to talk to her kid before she's going to bed. And she's walking through the house in this one steady cam shot, and she's holding up the camera from the thing. And the kid's listening to her, and she goes into a room and she goes, "Mommy, who's that behind you?" And it's like, it's so good. And
that's the worst thing anybody can say to you ever is what's that behind you?
Yeah.
Or to have a child whisper something.
Just run. Don't even look. Just run.
Yeah. Well, I was sleeping and my son came in and he was like, "Mommy." I'm like, "No, don't ever wake me up like that. That's horrible. No."
I have an evil smile I'm not allowed to give. I've been told I cannot do the evil smile. It's like, don't do it, especially if I hold a knife.
You have to do it now.
You have to do it for us now.
I may have to. I'll have to take a look. Now I'm all self-conscious about it, but I have this really
I don't have
interesting
I would just look like
smile.
I have gas.
But it's funny that I my unpopular opinion, but I like to think that it's right, is that these things where we talk about the working with the technology and the limitations of that, or realizing that there are things that happen in our lives that can seem mundane, and turning that into horror is sometimes where we find pure cinema. So what I consider pure cinema, first, I always start with this by saying, don't tell me, oh, that's just a gimmick. Go fuck yourself. Every movie is a gimmick. You know, what's his name? Robert De Niro gaining 50 pounds for Raging Bull is a gimmick. All movies have gimmicks. You either like the gimmick or you don't. And so when I go back to 1999 and I look at Blair Witch Project, that is pure cinema. We have a movie that is experimental in such a way that we are almost unaware of how things are changing around us. It's such a radical movie. You have two cameramen. You have improvised stuff happening. The woods look like real woods because they are real woods. All of that stuff, and our understanding of documentary and our lack of understanding of documentary, all of that works to create this thing. And yes, there was the hype of what was going on the internet, that people believed for some weird reason that the Blair Witch was real. And
I believed it.
Yeah, and
it was real.
And how is that wrong? Right? How is that wrong?
That's what they wanted.
That's what they wanted. And we are so inured with the urban legend. So why not create this urban legend? It's basically what Halloween is. John Carpenter's Halloween is the creation of an urban legend right in front of you, Michael Myers. But then there's the next one that's like that, which is Paranormal Activity, where you have a stationary camera and the audience is the cinematographer. You are looking in all four corners all the time, a little bit of sound effects, nothing but. And these are movies. That's pure cinema because we're doing the work. We are participants in the creation of the story as it's going. And I always go, if somebody's like, well, I laughed, I didn't see anything in it. I said, well, you're fucking boring. You're just a boring person. You have no imagination. Sorry. I guess the cinematographer has to work really hard for you.
It's movies like that I think the real magic is seeing them in a theater with an audience, because it's like you all are getting in on the ride together. Right. I mean, my favorite thing is to go see horror movies in the theater with like groups of people, because it's a shared experience. I mean, everybody's yelling at the screen and, you know, at appropriate moments. And it's like, we're all jumping together and, you know, Paranormal Activity is like the perfect type of film for that, because it's so immersive, because the audience is part of it.
Yeah. When I went to see it in the theater, it was the first week it opened, and you know, I think they had just done the upgrade of the cut, because you know the legend is Spielberg saw it, couldn't get out of the studio, he was locked in there with the movie, and he said, "Okay, I'll fund this thing," and then they upgraded it like they did with the Rodriguez film, like El Mariachi, that is. And so they glossed it up, but it still wasn't, I don't think they didn't have any end credits. That was the thing about that movie. So you're watching Paranormal Activity, you're in this dread central thing because it's day, night, and then they switch it up and the horror happens during the day and you're like, oh shit. And then it ends in darkness. So, and it like 2 minutes of darkness. Everybody is in this movie theater together, scared shitless, and it's dark. And all of a sudden you just hear somebody go, let us the fuck out of here. It's like, and so, that's when your movie works, and I think that's just fantastic. That original is so great. And I think the same with Host. That Host, you can, if you want to call it gimmicky, you heard what I said about gimmicks. But I think that they really were imaginative. And once again, it is pure cinema because there's just this almost unrehearsed feel to it. And it's smart enough to go to the extent of the technology and no further, to infer certain things, but also allow certain stuff that's got bigger production values than Paranormal Activity. There's like somebody hanging in the air and stuff. So you can be digital with it, but to be smart enough to have that repeating background, we're sitting here with virtual backgrounds right now and finding a great way to use that as a scare and knowing that it's going to come back. They set everything up with the folks in the very beginning. I thought, and putting a time limit. Don't let it out. It's a Ramones album, right? It doesn't sit there. It's not double album. There are 56 minutes or whatever it is. And I'm like, man, this is going to be, I looked at it, the running time. I'm like, that sounds horrible. This is going to be terrible. I couldn't even flesh it out. No, they put a timer in there, right? You have the time bomb. It was such a great idea. I really appreciated it.
We got a question. Waylon wants to know if there is, it says, does paranormal, supernatural horror, or more reality-based horror work more for you guys? What scares you? Ladies?
I'm a big fan of paranormal type of horror movies with the supernatural, psychological touch. One that comes to mind, Veronica, I believe it came out either 2017 or 2018.
Yeah.
That movie scared the life out of me. Along with Terrified. That one was another one.
Oh, that's fantastic.
It stayed with me forever because you know how it is. We're all horror fans. We watch movies and sometimes it's just like, that's nothing, right? But then right? But then where it's like, I love that feeling, as weird as it sounds, where it's like you watch a horror movie and you are so scared that it makes you not want to go, like get up and go to the restroom. Or sometimes with I think about even with the South Korean horror, A Tale of Two Sisters.
Oh,
yes, so psychological. So I remember
3 great scares in that.
Amazing. The one that really stuck with me, where the stepmother, oh, spoiler, with the stepmother.
That's all I was going to do.
Where the stepmother, she was just, wasn't the stepmother, it was the guest who was at their house and she was screaming at the top of her lungs and she kept on looking under like the stove area. As the viewer, the camera's just like slowing down, zooming in, just gliding closer. We see nothing and they leave it to our imagination. So I love when horror movies do that. They kind of leave it up to us. And, I don't know about you guys, but I live in the middle of nowhere. So it's kind of like there's a lot of creepy things around here. I live in a pretty creepy house and there's a lot of dark corners.
Yeah.
So it really gets
in the darkness.
Yeah. But I love it.
Yes. Maggie, what about you? Because I know even with Cleanse, which was a pretty supernatural.
We have to talk about Cleanse. That's cool.
Yeah. Let me think. Well, so I love supernatural horror. I grew up Catholic, Mexican Catholic. And so the worst thing that could ever happen to you was that a demon was going to come haunt you. And I grew up trespassing into old houses with my friends with our Ouija boards so we could try and talk to ghosts.
Nice.
Yeah, we were brave. We were brave kids. And so I remember watching Paranormal Activity around the same time that one of my friends had convinced herself that one of the ghosts from her ghost tour job in San Antonio had followed her home and was haunting her. And so we all spent the night at her house, and then we all went to go see Paranormal Activity. And I must have been 15 or 16 because I remember I hadn't seen Blair Witch Project yet. And so I was like, this is real. It must be real. This is definitely happening. These people
Yeah.
are dead. No one's doing anything about it. Like, it was just, so I just remember having like a full panic attack at the end of that film, thinking that it was a completely, totally real. And I do think that a lot of my, I would say the genre that best encompasses my film so far has kind of been magical realism, which is inherently a supernatural kind of genre, in which you kind of, you know, for those who don't know, who are watching, what magical realism is, it's when everything stays exactly the same except one thing is kind of off. I think like The Leftovers is a great example of magical realism. I'm trying to think, there's a billion others. But so I think that like that kind of, I really love the idea of exploring characters who see the world in a very supernatural way. So yes, and it also terrifies me. It's the thing that scares the crap out of me most.
Yeah, that's the thing that
Yes.
scares me. I grew up in a fundamentalist cult, basically, and they did believe that demons are right here waiting for you to screw up. And
Yes.
so what was so scary about Paranormal Activity was the daylight one where she goes, I think it's right here, and her hair brushes, blows up.
Yeah.
Yeah. That
Yep.
was what
Mhm.
I felt that a real possession would be like, that it just wants to let you know that it could eat you at any time. And it's there to destroy you. And so when I
Yeah.
saw that movie, I drove home. Now this is going to sound horrible, but it's true. I walked in, I'm scared. Here I am, this guy who has watched thousands of films. I love watching things that are like really insane. And I walk in and I'm like, I have to turn on some lights, and I'm like, this isn't working. So I pulled out, and it's terrible to say, but Sam Raimi's Drag Me to Hell, because that movie just cracks me up. I was like,
It's such
this
a
is the
great
most
time.
unrealistic film. I don't have to worry about anything now. I'm completely set. So I watched that movie, and I'm like, oh, thank you. Thank you for the excessive nosebleed. I feel so much better now. And then there's
Flush out the system.
Yep. And then at the end of the movie, it scared me because I forgot how intense her being dragged down to hell is. And it's like, shit, the end of that movie is like really rough compared to the rest of it. So, but yeah.
Well, I love to hear all the little rituals. Like, if you guys do watch something that really gets you and you're like, okay, I'm scared and I'm going to have to get up from where I'm at and go, like, what do you guys do? I mean, do you turn on the lights? Are you watching something funny? Are you just, because I will run so fast up the stairs.
That's hilarious that you ask, because the last movie to really kind of mess with my head was Hereditary. I think that specifically the scene with the attic door where she's banging her head on the attic door was just like, I don't know. A friend of mine and I, we were in kind of like, I guess, a masochistic mood. We decided to get high and go watch Hereditary for the first time. And so we were already heightened by the time we got to that scene. And so we were gone by the time the film was over. But I definitely am a sleep with the lights on kind of person. I have, I don't know if people can see the picture of my dog when the video's off.
Yes.
But I have a brindle boxer who does not like to sleep in my bed, but when I get scared is forced to sleep in my bed, and I like force spoon him.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's typically what I do have. Like, I will say, I think that people who make horror and people who love horror are also folks who have anxiety and are scared of everything also.
Yes.
And so I already have like extra locks on my door, and I have like a security system, and I have like 2 big dogs. Like, I'd like to believe I'm protected. Yeah. I think Ted Bundy once said that he went after the people who were easy. It wasn't the people who were, he was like, as soon as he saw that they had a dog or a security system or anything that was going to deter him or be like annoying for him to have to deal with, he immediately was like, I'll go for the easy one. I will never be the easy one.
But what about demons? Like, I mean, I don't think a security system is gonna.
I just, honestly, a friend of mine, her dad is a shaman. And I've always been one of those people who's like, I'm an eternal skeptic, so I won't believe in anything until I see it. But he told me that every single night I should close my eyes and imagine that my entire house is being cleared by beautiful white light, and then imagine my doors being closed, and imagine feeling safe and secure and protected. And he was like, and you won't have any problems for the rest of your life. And so that's what I do before every night before I go to sleep.
Well,
and
that just sounds nice and positive. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Xena,
I
what do you
guess,
do?
honestly, I just hope for the best because it's
Right.
like, what can you do?
Well,
It's like,
I'm terrified. I hope nothing bad
I mean,
happens.
it's like, you guys know sometimes when you're like, I like to sleep with the TV on, right? And I'll put on like a timer. And, I'll throw on like Goosebumps or something because who could resist those
Right.
parents being so oblivious and the outrageous stories? So I'll put that on, that's a little happy. But sometimes, okay, that very rare, well, for me, it's very rare that I just wake up, in the middle of the night, open up my eyes, and, the room is pitch black. And then you just start to see stuff, something in the corner, or
Yeah.
sometimes I have to get up, obviously, and go to the bathroom. And my bathroom is kind of far away, and it's very dark, and it takes some time to reach the light, where it's just like somebody, well, a lot of people could be in my house just hiding, and I wouldn't even know. They could be in the closet, they could be in the tub, they could be in the shower, they could be under the bed. Who knows? So that's what I mean. At this point, if it's my time to go, it's my time. I had a great run. So that's why it's just like,
Nope.
I go and I hope for the best. And I mean, I have a cat, but to be honest with you, she does not care at all. She would not protect me. She doesn't want to lay with me. So
That's so like, I feel like I don't know, that's hilarious to me. The thought, have y'all seen the video of the golden retriever that tries to play fetch with the burglars, where like they break in and he gets excited to see them and then brings them a toy and is like, I'm ready to play fetch. That's not my dog, thankfully. That's not I purposely got a dog that with a really scary deep bark. I just imagine your cat doing that, just being like, oh good, are people here to pet me and see me? And
yeah.
My dog would do that. I have a schnauzer now. I used to have a shepherd, but now I have a schnauzer. And that dog I swear it capsizes. It has no ballast. So as soon as it sees somebody, it goes, I'm flipping over to my belly. And so if they came in, it would just be like, here, belly rubs for me. And I'm laughing at you talking about your bathroom. I'm of an age where I get up an awful lot during the middle of the night. But my bathroom is like right back past the chainsaws and the skulls.
Right.
No, but it's like it's forever to get to my bathroom and stuff. But I don't have my ritual is I get scared and then I'm kind of over it. It's the overactive imagination. The thing that gets me sometimes is laying in bed and I think of something far worse than what I saw in a horror film. And it's like, God, why did I have to think of that? That's just absolutely terrible. And then I have to get up and walk around the house. I've had nightmares. And it's funny, when I was a kid or a teenager, I used to try and recollect everything that scared me during a day, because if I could remember it, I wouldn't dream about it. Like, it's the thing that was in my subconscious that I forgot about. So it's always funny when I do have a nightmare and I'm like, I'll go, I don't understand where that's coming from. It's like, you got a parking ticket. That's why you're having the nightmares.
Right.
Oh, I forgot I had that parking ticket that showed up. And it's just funny how my brain works. But when I was younger, I would rack my brain to try and remember everything that I thought would upset me and give me a nightmare at the end of the day, like taking inventory. And then if I inventoried it, it wasn't going to happen that night. And that's my weird ritual, I guess.
Yeah. I just like to watch something fun. Well, strangely enough, the last movie that kind of got under my skin for whatever reason, and I was like the last person to see it, was Sinister. I was watching with my husband and I was like, oh, this is creepy. And then it's over and I'm like, do you want to watch Curb Your Enthusiasm? Because I can't go to bed right now.
I think it's the little vignettes in Sinister that were scarier for me than the actual
lawnmower.
film.
Yeah.
Like
the lawnmower.
Like all of it was really. I watched it. I organized, of course, a scary movie night once a month, a virtual scary movie night for my team, and my team is mostly just thin white women with blonde hair who work in marketing and are the sweetest thing in the world, but. And so they all agreed to do it because they're sweet. And they were like, oh, Maggie makes horror movies. We'll go see horror movies with her. And so I showed them Sinister. And it was hilarious watching that movie with them. They were ripping it apart. They were like, Ethan Hawke is not a very good communicator in this movie. I do not appreciate the way that he is leaving his wife out. If my husband did that, if my husband did that. And I was like, you just saw a whole family get strung up by their necks. And you're more worried about the fact that Ethan Hawke isn't communicating with his wife.
That's the best.
New light. I mean, it makes it like not how can you be scared of a movie when now you see it through that lens, you know?
Yeah.
True.
Well, I like that you mentioned Sinister, because Scott Derrickson has made some really cool movies, and you know, if I remember correctly, he's a rather devout Catholic guy, so he really made The Exorcism of Emily Rose was really good, because
That one got
was
me
able-
too.
Yeah, the whole clock. That's maybe one of the things. My fear of demons is that, and it's an old dream, an old nightmare that I had, where I was at my house at some indiscriminate time of my life. There's a stereo playing, like my old turntable stereo, shag carpet. I never had shag, but I'm here in a place that has shag carpet.
Yeah.
And I'm
You
walking.
sure did.
Yeah, I'm walking across the thing, and the lamps. It's that weird kind of light, like it's a little smoky.
Yeah.
And so it's a little dusky, and the music's playing, and I'm walking, and all of a sudden I hear the record skip. And I'm like, huh. And I go to walk back over to the record player. The lights dim just a little bit, and like something that was on the couch, like a cover or blanket or whatever, flies up and lands on me, and something pins me to the ground, laughing. Something I can't see. And that is my recurring nightmare of demons. And it's this thing of, because I left a family and a crazy religion that believed that all of this was happening, and the end of the world was going to happen in 1975, and all your sins are on a big chalkboard, all this crazy stuff, right? And in that thing at the bottom of this pile with this invisible entity laughing at me, they're right. They were right. I've been wrong this whole time. And that's the fear that is there. Like, how could I have been so wrong? There is a whatever, fill in the blank, and it's there, and that it would destroy me. It's not just being eaten. It's not just being scared. It's being decimated, crushed, you know, having you as a person, you know, like Misery, him having to set fire to his own book, right, is a level of cruelty that is like saying, you are not better than me. You are nothing. Look what I can do to you at any time. Dance for me, you little toad. And you know, so I think that's what gets me with the demon thing. It's like, could I be wrong? But how can I prove that it doesn't exist, right? And so those moments when I'm fragile and I see a movie like that, when it gets it right, or it gets it the way that I felt it would be.
Well, it's got to be a real common, because if you look at films that deal with demonic possession and stuff, and the ones that really have had an impact on the culture, it seems to be it's got to be a common fear, or something that, as cynical as people are, might be like, but maybe, you know, because it seems to impact a lot of people. It's
so funny. I'm kind of freaking out right now because I'm next to a window in my backyard, and I'm just having that liminal, something's like keeps going. I keep like seeing there's no shadow, but I keep seeing a shadow. So,
yeah, I just
you should take your virtual background down. We'll keep an eye on you.
There's something behind you, Scott.
I'm sorry, Maggie, I interrupted you.
No. I was just gonna say that for me, the fear with the demons is the can't believe what you're seeing stuff. So I recently rewatched Oculus because it was free on Tubi, and it was one of those movies I was like double screening and not really paying attention. But there's this really great scene in that movie where they do the full scene where they are arguing with each other. It's a brother sister. They're arguing with each other about something. And then they come back into the room. The cameras are facing each other. Yeah. And then they rewatch the footage from the side camera, and they're arguing with each other, moving the cameras to face each other. Like they're the ones who did it, even though they didn't realize they were the ones who did it. So at least for me, like a lot of the like scary supernatural demon stuff is around like, you can't believe your eyes. Like even you can't even trust yourself in your experience. So how are you supposed to get out of it? Like, what if the house doesn't have a front door all of a sudden? You know what I mean? It's one of those kinds of, I think that's really terrifying.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it's a loss of control, because you're no longer in control of yourself and what's happening to you.
Yeah. I think that something that comes to mind, and this also touches with like supernatural type of stuff, but really gets to me. Sometimes how they can look like other people, you know, there's been a couple of movies where I've seen that. It's just like, it really got to me a lot. Yeah. But you know, as an example, I guess one that comes to mind, not so much of someone looking alike. Well, two things. One, I don't know if you guys ever heard of this legend. It's like a Indian legend. I think it's called like Nali Ba. And basically it's about this spirit demon that comes knocking on people's doors, and they're begging you to open up the door, and they'll sound like a family member. And obviously if you open up the door, they're going to kill you, you know? So it's kind of like an urban legend. And like, think about it. Like,
yeah,
if you see someone who's like a family member, you're going to open up the door. So that's freaky. And then even I always think about this movie, and I've noticed that I don't know if a lot of people, if they were fans of this one from 2012 called The Possession, about the little girl who finds the box at a garage sale. And, you know, I actually have a box that looks like that. I mean, I don't know. There's nothing in it, you know, but she finds...
Are you sure?
Throw it away.
I had it for a couple of years. Like, I don't know. Not that I'm trying to, like, test this stuff out, but...
Right.
Because even... One thing. This is... when I say trying to test stuff out, right? Because I have these creepy little sailor dolls. And people...
Xena!
That's horrible.
So yeah, there's like these.
Oh my God, there's two of them.
And what's crazy?
Twins!
They're twins. I named them Molly and Polly. And the thing is that, you know, when I tell people about them, they're like, get rid of them. I'm scared. And it's just like, guys, they're just these cute little dolls. But the story behind it is this lady, my husband and I, we were helping her move and stuff. And I just kept on looking at these dolls. I was like, whoa, what are those? And she's just like, oh, you know, they're just these dolls. I thought maybe like her grandma gave them to her. No. And she was just like, hey, do you want them? I was like, heck yeah. So I took them home. And what I think is funny is that I'll move them around. My husband doesn't think they're funny, you know, but it's funny, but not that I'm trying to test it out, but to me, those are just dolls. I think that they're cute. But even with the movie The Possession, this little girl, she picked up this box at a garage sale. She thought it was probably like a jewelry box, you know, and she was just obsessed with it. Just so happens, spoiler, there's a demon that's in the box. It comes out, and somehow, not only does it like just possess her whole entire existence, her family, but it literally goes in her body. She gets a CAT scan, and it's like they see it in her. And it's just like all like crunched up and like looking. And it was freaky, you know?
Yeah.
Point is, there's some creepy stuff.
Yeah, Xena, those dolls get up and walk around at night.
See, if
They're
I was
the worst.
if I had those dolls, or if I ever visit, you better watch out, because I'm sitting here just seeing myself like filling your tub with water and submerging them both face up and just turning out the light, letting your
what's crazy about them, there's two things. On both sides, like with the other one, their eyelashes fell off on the same side with both of the dolls. Then their little shoes are always coming off. So I don't know if they're playing a game. I don't know, you know, but I really like them. I think that they're cute.
Demons.
They're just,
Demons.
I also appreciate an old thing. Like, I also have old dead neighbors' furniture that I've lugged around with me for years. So, like, I would never take, like, I can't. It's got eyes, man. It's got eyes, and it's looking somewhere.
yeah, it's the uncanny valley.
Yeah, it's the uncanny valley.
They keep me company.
I like the creepy stuff. It's cool, especially to put up. I mean, those are really creepy. I'd have to talk to them for a little bit first before I decided if I could invite them into the house. But
no, they're
Let me
funny.
know. If you guys want to borrow them, I can mail them to you. We can swap them.
I used to be I was in the military, and I was a firefighter. I was a crash firefighter. I was on the flight line of the air base, the Air Force base that I was in. And so we had full-bodied mannequins that we were supposed to like carry. They were jointed and everything. You have to carry them. They were like 190 pounds so that you would learn what it would be like.
yeah,
And we just about every fire station I've ever been in, if somebody says it's haunted, no, there's a ghost in this fire station. There's always a ghost in fire stations.
yeah, they're all haunted.
So when I first got there, they're telling me about the haunted thing and everything. And of course, there's this fucking dummy. And they're like, where do we put it? Well, let's put the dummy. So they slide the dummy in the bathroom where their lockers are. so everybody has a locker, and they just put it, like, well, no one will think it's real if we just put it to the side with half its face sticking over the edge of a locker and its hand like this. So I walk in, I'm like, ah. So we used to hide that body all over the place, and it was like we'd put
Hide
body.
that body.
Yeah, hide that body. We put it in the back of the fire truck. Like somebody would have to go in the middle of the night on a thing, and the back is completely dark. But then you drive underneath a light, and you'd see the silhouette of somebody going, and be this freaking body.
Mannequins and dummies are scary. I mean, I think we can all agree to that. It made me think of the remake of Ghostbusters.
Well, Pin.
And when she walks in the room of mannequins, and she's like, "Yep, room full of nightmares."
Yeah, Pin. If anybody hasn't seen Pin, a great Canadian
seen Pin. I need
Canadian horror film. Oh my God, 1986 or something like that.
And I think it might be either on Tubi or even on YouTube.
Wow, really? Okay, because that was a lost film. I remember seeing it back in the day when it was one of those Canadian exports that showed up on VHS, but I had never seen it like on DVD or anything. And that's about a doctor who has a dummy, and that's just really clever, that movie. But it hits on that whole thing of the uncanny valley. And there's no way you'd think Pin. Well, I don't know. He is kind of weirdly horrible, beautiful. But it's not like you would think he was alive, and yet that movie really
something happens. Christopher G. Moore said, "I want to start a business called All Dead Neighbors Furniture." I think that would be brilliant. I would shop there.
Somebody's mentioning Resusci Annie. That's the old resuscitation Annie doll, and there's a whole bunch of urban legends about how that doll came into being, who Annie is, that it's the person who created the. Yeah, well, I think that is okay. Resusci Annie never really freaked me out, but there are ones now that do. They have a dental one that has like a real looking tongue and everything, and it's just like, and it twists like a Rob Bottin fucking freak ass thing. Well, and it's like, so that you
what's that
for dental surgery, to learn dental surgery and stuff like that. So they have a dentist thing.
I get it. I'm still thinking a CPR doll with.
You're like, why does it have teeth if you're?
Yeah, I'm like, I don't understand. You're learning CPR.
I'm your boyfriend now, Nancy. But yeah, they have ones with the fake puke in them, because
there's a lot of stuff I don't know.
But yeah, they showed these dental things. I think they're big in Japan right now, and I was like, no, there's no way I could do that, because it's not like they went through the trouble of creating the whole body. They just have like part of the torso, and
it's armless,
perfect.
It's got a little bit of a chest,
and it's opening its mouth, and it's going and it's like, what the?
So it will move the tongue, like you turn, like it's like got a day one program, and it'll, like, you press the button and it.
Yeah, it does a little. Please stop doing that. Please stop doing that. Yeah, that's I guess.
I'm gonna Google that later. I want to see what this thing looks like.
I did a show on.
Then I'm gonna get some really weird stuff from Wish. I bet.
I did a show on Uncanny Valley, and I was looking up stuff to see how bad it was at this point, including artificial intelligence. And they showed this doll. They had several dolls in Japan that were weird, like Welcome. It's like, what was that? Johnny Cab from the Total Recall. Hello, welcome to Johnny Cab.
Oh, yes.
So it's like Johnny Cab is real now, but it's in like hospitals or in apartment buildings. They have a robotic concierge. Instead of just having a camera, they have an animatronic guy who goes, "Hello, Robert. It's good to see you." And I'm like, that's so fucking creepy.
Yeah, I mean, did we learn nothing about Skynet? Don't mess with this stuff.
Obviously, we haven't learned anything. So time is flying, so we should probably talk about. Oh, I'm having fun where we're going, but I did want to talk about one thing that happened like within the last 24 hours, and that's Tara Ansley buying Fangoria and Gorezone and Starlog, and they're going to reboot it after all the shit that happened with Cinestate. And I was interested in what people feel about that. A filmmaker, an artist, a producer who's now bought Fangoria.
I'm excited about it.
I need to read about it. I haven't really.
I'm not in the loop.
I
Yeah.
haven't done much in the last 24 hours, apparently. Xena, tell us, what do you
Well,
know?
I'm really excited about it. Tara, I believe, did she produce Tragedy Girls?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And that is such a fun movie. I
Saint
really like it. It's
Agatha.
a lot of fun. Yes, Saint Agatha. I'm happy to see where it's going. I'm really interested in like the direction that they're going to take it. I think that this is going to be a great thing because she is not saying, I don't really know too much about the previous owners, but it's kind of like, it's great to know that she is a horror fan, a genre fan. So I think that this could be a very awesome thing, and they're very interested in, just new voices. So that's an awesome thing.
Yeah, I think it's great, and it's like we just lost Uncle Bob Martin, one of the original editors in chief of Fangoria. He just passed, and so that was the heyday, as far as I'm concerned. My own personal opinion is that when Bob Martin was in charge, he's one of those influential people that. We got our love for genre and our interest in certain things because of his interest. Would we be into Mexican horror wrestling if it didn't show up in Fangoria in the early days? Would we be interested in Dark Shadows? We may have been the Night Stalker, but would we remember Dark Shadows if it wasn't in every one of those early magazines? And so because there were so few outlets, Fangoria had this huge footprint for folks across the world where we didn't have the internet and stuff. We had these magazines that would show up. And so it kind of, in my opinion, lost its steam, kind of became a little bit more corporate, and then kind of lost that even. I wasn't reading it for a while, but I have many friends who had subscriptions, almost doggedly holding their nose and keeping it a subscription because of the name, right? Because of what Fangoria meant. So I think, Fangoria was this vanguard thing. It was a dirty upstart back in 79 when it started. I think 2020 having it once again being dirty upstarts, being something that it kind of became Reader's Digest for horror, and it's time to shake it up, and it's time to go back to where horror will take us. And I have no idea what it's going to be, but I know it's a whole different generation looking at horror in a whole different way, and I think that that's important and necessary. My opinion isn't nearly as important as the opinion of the people who are going to be making films soon.
Mm-hmm.
How are you guys feeling on time? People who are in watching us and listening, thank you so much and partaking. We might be bringing people in at some point, but right now we're enjoying ourselves too much. But I want to make sure that we have enough time on here.
And just to put it out there, because I feel like this is a casual format, I do have to run at 9:00, but that does not mean that this has to stop by any means. School night. I gotta get the kids to bed. But if you guys are comfortable and want to just keep it going and you're enjoying the conversation, don't let me stop you.
I was also going to bring up something that I usually ask in the beginning, but we got off to a really good start. And then what I want to do is get back to talking about something that you brought up, Maggie. But it's first kiss. My thing is I always talk about the first kiss of horror. What was the horror movie that made you, who you are? We went down this terrible track. So I know, Vanessa, you want to talk about yours very quickly because you raised your hands.
I did, but not because of the first kiss. Somebody had chimed in on the whole Fangoria thing, and I thought, before we get onto a different subject.
Yes, Cinestate, exactly. It's getting out of the hands of Cinestate, always important.
Yes. Christopher G. Moore said the main thing is getting Fangoria out of the hands of Cinestate, which allowed sexual harassment on their film sets. Fangoria didn't need to be associated with that. I think since they relaunched as a tangible mag, has really brought back the way it was in the past, and now under new leadership, they'll be able to do more stuff.
Yes, excellent. I didn't bring that up, but I'm glad somebody did, because that was one of the it's another reason why I think Tara taking it over, it's kind of like the spoils of war. This place, they took our precious Fangoria and besmirched it with their horse shit over at Cinestate, and now we've got fans that have taken it back and fans that are going to say that's not going to happen here. something else might happen, but that's not going to happen here.
Now back to the first kiss. You already know mine, so y'all go.
But we don't know yours.
Oh, well, you guys might not know mine, but some other people do. But you guys go first. Nobody wants to hear me talk.
Okay.
You're the
Okay.
guest.
Sure. Well, I'll go. I'm always talking, I feel, about Kevin Tenney, but Kevin Tenney's Night of the Demons, 1988. I
Great
was
film.
a child, and I remember the opening, the title sequence it's animated, So I thought, okay, this is gonna be a spooky Halloween thing, I was just like a little kid, and I was like, yay, like really excited. And obviously it wasn't. It's very, at the time, it like scared the life out of me, but I could not stop watching it. I was so in love, still am, with Angela. I kind of wanted to be her. And, it's one of those movies I feel that I'll watch it throughout the year, not just only around Halloween. I just really enjoy it. And I remember even watching the sequels, I enjoyed the sequels too. Like, I really love the second one. The second one is a movie. It's like a comfort horror for me. It's the type of movie that I'll watch if I'm having a bad day, if I'm feeling down, if I'm feeling
It's
sleepy.
your warm bowl of soup.
It is. And I feel like I just feel like sometimes that's just what we need, and even with the third one, it's sometimes there's some silly scenes within these movies, but that's what makes me like really love it. But yeah, that was like one of the first movies that I remember watching and like really just feeling hooked.
Mm-hmm. Good one.
Yeah, I love that, and it's one of those movies that has a surreality to it that I really appreciated, especially in the '80s when things started going. They were surreal by mistake, like slashers.
Right.
That would just be overblown. But then and that's why I loved Nightmare on Elm Street, and why I think that was such a seminal, important horror film of the time. Yes, the sequels got out of hand and all of that, but the original film, that like brought back this, like back in the Méliès days, we're talking like early silent film stuff is being done in that movie.
Yes.
And it's so fucking wonderful. And that's the stuff that I respond to so much. I liked really weird Pink Floyd album covers and stuff in the 70s. So I like when things get a little bit bizarre.
Yeah.
How about you, Em?
Let me see, my first kiss. So I'd seen a few. So my mom is a complete and total weenie. Like, she is like, literally, her and I are complete opposites. So she's like, even if she has to go get like a shot at the doctor, she's just like complains about it the entire day. Any movie that it has any blood, she immediately covers her eyes and is like, please tell me when it's over. Tell me when it's over. So she showed me Halloween was my first horror movie that she showed me, and I was too cool for school as a 13-year-old, and so I laughed through the entire thing while she was scared. But then of course Karma. So the movie that kicked me in the butt was The Ring, because I think I was 13 or 14 when it came out, and I just remember counting down the days, like counting down the 7 days, and was convinced that I too was going to get my phone call.
Yeah.
And she was going to come after me, which weirdly enough, I've since rewatched the film a couple times just to kind of see how it's changed for me over the years. And the second time I rewatched it, I remember thinking, God, this movie is so bad. I hate it so much. I can't believe I was so scared of it. But then I recently rewatched it again, and I was like, actually, it holds up. Like, it's a little bit of a twisty plot, and it's a little hard to keep up with. But overall, like, I felt like it definitely, it was nice to see people using VHS tapes in earnest. And it just felt very nostalgic.
It's interesting sometimes to try to go back to those early films that got us, right? Because, when you're younger and you're kind of just discovering a lot of this, it's all new. And so it hits you in a different way. And like, it may be, years and years and years. And then you go back and watch and you're like, I wonder why I found that so scary, or you might revisit it and still see it, but
it's also, I think, kind of where you're at least for me, because the first time I saw it, I was a 13-year-old who was just getting into horror. The second time I saw it, I was beginning like a very short phase in my filmmaking career that I call my film snobbery phase, where I thought that I was like the smartest person in the world, and clearly every film that I saw was up for grabs to my critique.
Right.
And which was a horrible phase, and I'm so glad that's over. And now I think that when I recently rewatched it, which was in quarantine, it was a little bit different. It was again from that like loving nostalgic kind of place, and so I
Yeah.
gave it a lot of liberties maybe that very smart film critic me a few years ago might not have.
Yeah.
But I think it's definitely like where you're coming from as you're diving in.
Oh, I
Definitely.
100% agree. And I think, obviously you can look at it being a generational thing, because the movies that say I grew up on or had seen when I was very young, I've tried to introduce to, my kids, because I'm thinking like, oh, they're going to think it's so scary and they're bored. I wanted to show them the original Friday the 13th just because they were like, what is this? Can we watch it? And I'm like, yeah, why not? Like, it's not, I'm considering what they see on the news and everything else. I was like, yeah, it's fine. I mean, they're not little. So snooze fest for them. And I kind of watched it through their eyes and I was like, it is a little bit slow.
Oh man, that
Yeah.
happened to me. That happened to me watching Halloween, John Carpenter's Halloween,
Yeah.
about I guess 5 years ago or so. They had I think it was, I'm forgetting, it was in Chicago, Fright. It was one of the conventions. I can't remember what one it is, but it was
Sure.
a reunion of Halloween. They showed Halloween out in the parking lot on this big screen, and we're all like sitting there going, "Oh, this is great! This is great!" And we're watching it, and there were younger people in the audience too, and
Yeah.
all of a sudden, with them there, just the sighing or the coughing or the shifting, I started to realize how the pacing is in the movie.
Yeah.
Considering what you see today, that the pacing is so slow comparatively. I still adore it, right? But at the same point, I get that time has passed.
Well, I feel the same way about The Exorcist, because I
Hmm.
mean,
Yeah.
there's so much in the beginning that is really just discovering, trying to figure out what's going on before you even realize that she's actually possessed, and so much in the hospital and everything else. And I was like, because my daughter asked to watch it and I'm like, I don't think you're gonna like it. I mean,
Even
just
Star Wars, when Star Wars got reshown before they did Phantom Menace, they had like episode 4 playing,
yeah,
and we went there in the pajamas and all of that, that whole thing of being
yeah,
there, the first people with your cameras so you could take a picture of Star Wars actually in the movies again. I'm watching it, I'm like going, wow, this is slower than I
yeah,
remember, but this is like Star Wars. How can it be slow? And it's like, no,
right.
you don't realize subtly how pacing changes. Now, Zena, I think you mentioned something about you've watched movies and you're like, why were they scary? Because they're not scary now. You watch them again, you're like, oh, geez, maybe I think it was you. But I was thinking, does anybody have the opposite effect? And what I mean by that is like a lost film. You haven't seen or thought about a movie that galvanized you as a kid, and then you're watching something again. You're like, I know this movie, and then it's like, oh my god, and it's like a scene that really freaks you out. Last House on Dead End Street did that to me because that was a movie that was kind of like an urban legend when it first came out, and I heard all about the surgery scene, but nobody remembered the name. And so that was a movie that was lost until 2000 or so. And then they found the director, and Barrel Entertainment put out a DVD, and you finally get to see it. And so I finally see the surgery scene, and I flashed back to being a kid, hearing my aunt telling all about this woman who's getting her legs sawn off, and that she's fainting, and they're putting smelling salts under her nose to wake her up so she could feel the saw more. And I'm like, holy cow, can that be real? And then I saw it, and it was like an out of body experience. Have you
Yeah.
guys had those?
Um, I don't know exactly like that. I will say there was a film. I don't know what it was. All I can remember is a specific scene in the film because I saw it when I was young and it has burned itself into my memory. I don't know what movie this was, but all I can remember is there was a woman driving a car. It was like a 70s style car. And it was like the windshield started kind of crackling and getting to where she couldn't see, but it was like slowly, fogging and crackling. And she was like, couldn't get out of the car. And I just remember like she was driving and it just stuck in my head and it terrified me. And I don't know anything else about the movie. I don't know who was in it. I don't know what it was. I don't even know if it was scary.
The Bell
traditionally.
from Hell was another one that got me. There was a movie
Oh
called The Bell from
yeah,
Hell. And there,
that was such a cool movie.
yeah, it was such a cool movie, but I forgot about it. And then I saw the scene where they're getting strung up, and I was like, oh my God. And I could feel where I was when I was a kid. And I saw that by mistake. One of the many films that I saw that I shouldn't have
Yeah.
seen.
I
Amityville
guess
Horror did that.
that's another
Saw
good
by
one.
mistake. Whoops.
Did you like the not the sequel, but the remake, the one in 2005 with Ryan Reynolds and?
Yeah, I actually thought they did a pretty good job with it. Revisiting the original, I think I forgot just how like embarrassingly cheesy it was in certain moments. Like the scene that always gets me where I'm like, oh, I can't even when she's doing the ballet. I don't know what it is about that, but I'm like, I'm out. I'm checked out. I can't watch Margot Kidder do ballet and be sexy. It just didn't work for me.
I was gonna say, I guess there is this one movie that pops up in my brain. Like I remember when I was a kid, and kind of like what Scott was saying, you just remember this particular scene.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember this scene where these kids, they were in a barn and they see their grandfather's like truck. Handcuffed to the wheel is this woman, and she looks like she looks a little bit beaten up. She looks tired. Like you don't know if she's like a relative. She's just this random woman, and she's kind of creepy, right? And I couldn't remember the name of it because I remember seeing it as a kid. Years later, down the line, I was minding my business, and I just picked up a movie to watch, and it's called Grandmother's House from 1989, and that was the movie. So when I saw that scene, yeah, it was just kind of like, oh, it just came back,
Yeah.
and it was still, even though it's like an 80s movie, I personally still feel like it holds up today. Yeah. Because there's some freaky stuff that happens in that movie. So you ever get a chance, watch it. I don't know if it's streaming anywhere.
Check it out. Jason Bradford said the scene in Rawhead Rex when he chased the pregnant woman through her farmhouse always freaked me out. That was a hard movie to get for a long time. It's on Blu-ray now. Rawhead Rex. I don't know.
Yeah.
You guys?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's actually a pretty cool movie. It's about this like monster that goes after men only.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool.
It's Clive Barker from his Books of Blood. And
okay.
if you ever read that, that's sordid. That's a wonderful. I mean, that's so wonderfully blasphemous and sacrilegious. He's a demon. Yeah. And everything he just shows, and you just see what he looks like. And priests are like doing all sorts of shit they shouldn't be doing. And it's like, really, that's one of the things that I love about Barker. He was absolutely necessary at the time he came out. We had Stephen King, then we had Barker to break down one more barrier. And that holds up. I reread Books of Blood about a year or so ago. And it's amazing how diverse the stories are in there, how imaginative they are, and how transgressive they are. How he's just breaking down taboos left and right. And it's just, that's what I think horror should be about. M, I was going to ask you about, do you have any of those? And I want to talk about your movie, Cleanse, very quickly as well.
Yeah, I couldn't think of one specifically, but I will say that I am a massive Clive Barker fan. And if you've not read his young adult novels, they're brilliant. Like The Thief of Time is brilliant. I read that book. It's so funny how things come back around because I read The Thief of Always, excuse me. I read The Thief of Always when I was in middle school or high school maybe, and I loved the book because I was always very drawn to like, Coraline, The Giver, The Thief, like the darker books. And so, and of course The Shining, everyone read too young. But it's a brilliant, weird book about a kid who gets trapped in this adoption or in this orphan home that gets stuck in time. And then he comes back and his parents are old. So it's like these weird things that you would be scared of when you were a kid. And he also wrote this this trilogy called the Abarat Trilogy. That's about a girl, I think her name's like Sandy Chicken something. And she gets trapped in this weird world. Like it's Clive Barker, but like full Harry Potter meets fantasy meets just crazy like world building. It's brilliant. He's brilliant. And so I think that for me, it was coming back to like old Clive Barker, and then reading adult Clive Barker as an adult, and kind of just being able to like follow him through all of that. He's just so, I don't know, I love him.
Yeah. Yeah, he's something. I finally got to meet him and thank him for his stuff. And I mean, he's really, really frail now. I'm hoping that he makes it.
I know, it's so sad. He's the only author I think I've ever written, like handwritten fan mail to, just because he was so influential to me. Yeah. He's great.
Yeah, he's his imagination has just been fantastic. So I did want to, speaking about fantastic imagination, it's funny because I hadn't talked about Cleanse, but I want to talk about it now because we've learned a little bit more about you, right? So you have some interesting folk in your family that deal with white magic, it sounds like, and things such as. And Cleanse is a really interesting story that one of the things that I really liked about it is it felt authentic, even if I didn't know precisely what that world was like. I knew enough of it and it felt very real. So for those that haven't seen Cleanse is a story of a healer, a crystal healer. She's in like a storefront, and she's got a nice little business, and she basically cleans up all of her crystals. And you basically see that her life is almost like there's not much to it except for this. She's like a receptacle for these things. She recharges them and they recharge her, and there's a cycle. And she's taking in people, and at the end of the day, after she's just been, gone through everything that she needs, so she's putting everything away, these two people come in, and they're obviously in a bad relationship. And we have body horror in this very interesting way. It's body horror that only the person who is spiritually attuned is seeing. So these people this woman is sitting in her chair, and she has these crystals, and she's looking at her, and all of a sudden there's these weird growths, like these huge, long spindles of flesh coming out of the throat and the neck and all these pressure areas. And they're growing as the other person is disbelieving what's happening and is unhappy that they're even there. And so this woman is feverishly just sweating, taking these crystals and pulling this off. And there's no incidental music or anything. It has this real, very Cronenbergian feel. And it ends really interestingly, what we all have kind of worried about when we were talking about our anxieties here, about demons and things. What's the residue? What's the residue that happens if you're delving into this thing? So I just wanted to say that was a really striking horror film, and I really liked where it was going. And I'm intrigued that you have that in your family. So that's kind of, you've answered it without even knowing by some of the things you were talking about. Have you had anything when your family finds out that you're doing horror movies and stuff? Has there ever been anything that they're like, "On, you really want to go there?" Or did you ever ask advice and they're like, "I'm not telling you, but not for what you want to do"?
Yeah, yes. So I think that part of magical realism and part of like Mexican American culture in general is like the seamless integration of the supernatural into the real world. Like those two things aren't seen as like two separate things. Yeah. They're just seen as the world. Like the world just is, and supernatural things exist within the world, and there's no separation. So like so like my mother, well, it's a very normal for my mom to call me and say like, "I dreamed of your grandmother last night. We had a really great conversation. She wants me to tell you this. And by the way, don't forget." Like it's just kind of like weaved into the world very seamlessly. And so I think that in general, also growing up in San Antonio, Texas, which is predominantly Latin American and predominantly brown as a city, I think that it's kind of just well known that you don't fuck with that stuff, right? Like I remember when I went to Toys R Us to buy my Ouija board when I was 15 and brought it home, and I had to smuggle it in because I knew that like my parents weren't going to appreciate having a Ouija board in the house. And I think that there's this kind of like underlying fear of demons, because if we inherently believe that, for example, Dia de los Muertos, if we inherently believe that our loved ones are around us and constantly communicating with us and always there, then we also have to believe that there's inherent evil out there and it's also around us and we need to protect ourselves from it. And so I think that my mom in particular has always been very confused by my obsession with horror, especially given, like I said, that she's a complete weenie and the total opposite of me and always covers her eyes. Even in a drama, if in a drama they show like a cut, her eyes are closed. So her favorite movie is, I think, Love in the Time of Cholera. We're polar opposite humans. So I think that, yeah, she definitely doesn't understand it, but of course they're supportive as they can be. I definitely tell them what things to read and what things not to read. Like I'll go, oh, I published this new thing. It's really great. You should probably skip this one though.
Right.
I hear you on that. It's funny. I grew up in northeastern Pennsylvania, the coal mine country. And so they're still reasonably close enough to Pennsylvania Dutch, and there are people who are Shakers and things like that that are in town. The old world stuff, they're just as afraid of demons, and there's old world versions of all of that. So I'm well aware of what you're talking about, and people saying things like, I grew up where there was the person who had a ghost in their house, and they fully believed in the ghost and talked about it.
Same.
They were
Yeah.
somewhat irritated by it, not as much scared or anything, but they were irritated, and sometimes it would do things that it wasn't supposed to, and they'd have to have someone come over to the house and yell at them. And so it's really interesting. We kind of do live in magical realism. And I'm always intrigued by, like, for my hometown, we opened up the earth, right? We're coal miners. So we've got these big holes in the earth. So all of our urban legends are like the devil walks out of those holes. Men go into those holes but don't come out, and their souls are stuck there. And so at midnight, you can hear the people who are stuck in the mine accidents weeping. And but the devil comes out, and he comes out to tempt you. He comes out like your favorite friend. And all of that stuff is really intriguing to me. And because of the way that my family is, we have a belief in demons and stuff like that. There's also the thing of talking about this stuff puts me at risk. Somebody mentioned Susie Linsmeyer talked about The Exorcist book being scarier than the movie, and that's how I got The Exorcist. I took it from the library and brought it in my house under the guise of many other books, because having it in the house was dangerous. And I remember being terrified that night that if I woke up possessed, it wouldn't be that I woke up possessed. It would be that my parents would know that I willfully brought evil into the house, and I got caught, and they're all at risk. And what a horrible son I am. And so it's really interesting how all of that works. I felt that kind of thing in your piece, that there's that thing about, well, this is just happening. Magical realism. We're in a strip mall. could be a chiropractor, but no, she has crystals that she carries around with her, and it causes all of that. So I know, yeah. Vanessa, it's that time.
I do. It's the magic hour. I have to go, but keep it going, man. And I guess this is going to be it for a while. Things are getting busier again, which is good and kind of sad for things like this. But
I need a co-host.
Scott and I will always pop up now and then to do stuff. He's a busy guy. He'll keep it going. But thank you guys so much for joining us. I'm gonna duck out here and let you guys keep chatting all the good stuff. And yeah, I'll catch up with you on the social media.
Okay, thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks, you guys. Bye.
Oh, it's always that thing while you're waiting, the person disappear. So, I don't want to keep you any longer than you need to be. Is there what would you like to talk about, so that we don't just keep going down weird paths?
I can probably do about 30 more minutes, but I did want to say something really quickly, kind of about cleanse, which I think is something that is starting to happen more and more in horror that I think is really interesting. And Ari Aster is actually doing a lot of this, which is part of the reason why I think that it's so interesting. Is I think that the predominant fear, or the predominant kind of theme in horror, in a lot of like mainstream horror specifically, what they were trying to get you to be scared, right? Like the fear was a fear. And I think that a lot of, with Cleanse 2, the fear for me when I was writing it wasn't of fear. It wasn't of being scared. It wasn't of being physically injured. I think for me, I wrote that in a time in which I was like struggling with depression. And so the fear was of myself, and the fear was of like the internal emotions that I had that I could not cope, and like I wasn't able, or wasn't in a place where I was able to really understand the emotions and how to kind of like control them and release them. And so I think that Ari Aster kind of did this in Hereditary too, where his movies are mostly about grief, right? It's about a breakup, and then it's about grief. It's about the scary part is the internal emotion. The scary part is the thing inside you that you can't deal with. And so I think that it feels to me like horror's moving in that direction, and it feels really exciting that it's not just about the blood and gore. That's definitely an important part of it, but it's also about dealing with like internal emotional turmoil, which, I mean, I guess it always has in a way, but it feels more prominent now, if that makes sense.
I think it's a wave that has been happening for a while. And I don't know, about 5 years ago, I was sitting with somebody at a film festival, and I mentioned we seem to be in the era of dread, which makes me so happy, because dread is like this exquisite emotion that horror goes for, which is, we all know that the hunt is better than the grab. And a lot of times with horror, the shock, the scare is the big apex, but at the same time, it's a letdown, because then it's over. Whatever it is, the release has happened. Whereas with dread, it's all about the buildup, the slow burn, and the slow burn is really great. I think we're going back to a time, if you look at some of the early Universal monsters, it was all about the internal, right? But we had external demons. The vampire looks a certain way. But Frankenstein and the werewolf, I mean, we're really talking about the inner grief and the guilt and the shame. And Val Lewton's stuff was almost always about that kind of thing. There have always been some of the greatest horror films are about loneliness and loss of identity. And ghost stories have almost always been about that. So M.R. James stuff. So I'm really happy that we've decided. I think it is this thing that we are finally getting away from the generic use of the labels of genre, and allowing, just like we have sexual identity fluidity, we are now starting to have genre fluidity, as well as all other forms of fluidity. And we're allowing mashups to happen without worrying about it. We're hybridizing. And I think that horror is this wonderful thing. It's like the hot sauce that goes with everything. You can put horror into any storyline, and it's going to work. And it's going to take that storyline and allow it to be allegory and metaphor. And I think we're challenging that now. We have movies that are just for the sake of horror. There are movies like things that would never have been made before, or would have never gotten seen, like Zombie Ass, these movies from like Japan and stuff, where you're like going, oh my God, that's real. And so it's not like we're suddenly so highbrow. We have everything, and it's coming from all different areas. And so we have gore fests that are still happening, and we have movies that have this dread, but we're having people appreciating the dread. And I think for so long, whether we like to admit it or not, we would have searched out movies like Midsommar and stuff, but we were always being fed, and happily fed, movies that weren't that. We were going along with what was given to us. And now we're starting to get more, and we're allowed more because of things like Amazon and Netflix opening up new avenues for, they need products, so they're going to go to Indonesia, and all of a sudden you have this rash of amazing Indonesian horror films that you've never seen before that have sequels. Art of the Devil 5. You're like, what? And so you're like, this is amazing. So we get this wonderful thing that we used to talk about all the time. It's interesting because in a way, everybody gets to be a film geek. If you have a strong enough bandwidth and Wi-Fi, you can be a film geek that you used to have to go to libraries to find.
Well, I also think, and this is something that I talked about a little bit during the Q&A of Cleanse 2 at the Women in Horror Film Festival, was that I think we're also making horror more accessible to different audiences, even in the United States, right? Like I listened to an interview about Get Out, and they were talking about how like this is the first time we're seeing on screen a horror movie that Black folks can look at and say, I have that horror in my day-to-day life, right? And I think the same thing with like magical realism, specifically in like the Latin American community. I love to see more movies like Cleanse and more movies that are horrific in that way. Like
Tigers Have No Fear.
Yeah, like there's just not, it feels to me, and I've always been pretty vocal about this, but that like the horror community is pretty white and it's pretty male. And I think that kind of has been limiting for a very long time, especially for like the big production companies. Like if the genre audience is white and male, then we're going to put out more movies that appeal to men who are, well, most movies out to men who are white. And I think that like now we're seeing things slowly start to shift. And that's a really exciting time because I don't think that horror is I don't think that horror is only for men, right? Like women have these, like, what was it? The movie that came out recently, Mother, where she, it's the one where they like sew her lips shut and stuff.
Mama, yeah.
Mama, yeah. Like there's just so many great, like, I mean, even just thinking about some of the horrible things that women have to go through in their lives, there's just so much more there. That I think we're kind of like, it felt like we almost had like tunnel vision, and the stuff that was like, I think more accessible was kind of going on in the background. And I agree with video on demand, it's become so much more easy to find stuff that is just more accessible. Like we're bringing more people into the fold, and that's really exciting. And also really contributing to that kind of like genre blending, because it's been difficult for us with Cleanse to try and like go through, we're going through like a festival run right now. And it's so difficult for us because they always ask you in a lot of the bigger film festivals, what genre is your film? And I'm like, can I check like 3 of them? Because it's like kind of horror, but it's also kind of drama, but also magical realism isn't on here, but also maybe is it sci-fi because there's intestines? Like my film doesn't feel like it fits in one box happily. And so it's kind of nice I agree with you. I think that the genre blending is really important.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I got involved with Women in Horror Film Festival and Etheria Film Night, and before that, the Viscera Film Festival, because I just stumbled upon a film festival where short films by women were playing along with films by traditional usual suspects. And I was bored shitless through the usual suspects. It was chair porn. It was where everybody was being tortured on a chair. It was like 2 or 3 years where every short film was some poor guy stuck to a chair being punched with holes. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm at a horror convention, that's for sure. And then these really interesting films came out, and I was like, I'm a selfish guy. I want the best. I'm a selfish horror fan. I want the best. I want to see all the stories. So why would I not want to see these stories, which are completely alien to me at times, just by sense of perspective, just a little perspective shift. And all of a sudden, it's a brand new story without reinventing the wheel, just a look through a different lens. And it's been really entertaining and interesting to me. And seeing, all the different groups getting some form of representation that brings stories to where I didn't know. I'm loving, like right now, HBO has done more than all of the education systems of the United States and high schools about race relations between Watchmen and Lovecraft Country.
Lovecraft, yes. I'm so excited. I saw the first episode. I haven't seen the second one yet, but the first one was like, I'm excited. This is going to be fun. Yeah,
between those two episodic shows, there's so much that is coming to view. People have known for the longest time. Some people have known for the longest time all the things that are being talked about, like sundown towns and things like that. But for a lot of people, it's brand new. And they're like, oh, whoa, this is really intriguing stuff. And that's where horror should be. And I don't want to get too into, because it's late and we have only a few minutes left, but I could go into, I'm going to have a show on Hellbent for Horror all about Lovecraft Country, because I'm loving where it's going and how it's breaking so many rules. Like for me, the rule is I like my subtext below the text. That's why it's called subtext. And yet, this is not below the text, right? It is the text. It is beyond the text. We are in a multi-pronged storyline, which is self-referential as well as referential to today and talking about the past, and literally having moments where there are speeches and debates world famous debates happening during the action sequences. And it's like, this is blowing away so many ways that we're used to having narrative. And it's
Right.
like taking away, it's almost like the polite way to do narrative is not what's
Yeah.
being done here. And it works where it shouldn't. In my mind, if I go by my hard, fast rules, it should smell like burning tires, and it doesn't.
Yeah, I have a question for you, Xena, since you have like an encyclopedic knowledge of horror, and I'm definitely not one of those folks. I'm curious, like, if you saw or like sniffed the change coming like earlier than most, like at what point did you see all of this coming? Because it feels to me like on my end, like Midsommar, Hereditary, and Get Out, that was kind of when things started to shift. But I'm sure that the winds of change were like, you could smell it before that. I just don't know when it was happening.
I think honestly, I want to say, I don't watch The Walking Dead anymore. I used to be like crazy about it, like the earlier seasons, but I started to see a shift with that. Even before that, thinking about with True Blood, I know that
Right.
it's also a drama. And then even going back to Dexter, it's kind of like it has those horror elements. There are so many people I've come across and they'll tell me how, I don't like horror, but they're watching Dexter or they're watching The Walking Dead. And I'm not saying it's all horror, but it has those elements. So my opinion is, yeah, you do, but there was like a shift. Even going, again, when I think about the first Zombieland, so many people I remember saying I have friends who are just, they're not fans of horror, like at all. Like, that's why I'm their friend who likes horror, but they're not fans, so, which is fine, but they're a big fan of like Zombieland. So my whole thing is, not that I'm trying to like get people to like something, or force it on them, but I saw the shift happening like even back then. So it's kind of like, I think it just depends. Obviously it depends on the individual, but I feel like there really is a horror movie for everybody.
Yes.
And not even trying to sound like super cheesy, but I was talking
That's
about
what I believe.
podcast. It's like, I have a friend, she's really into fashion, right? So I recommended to her the new Suspiria. She loved it. I recommended to her, what's that movie? Is it Inseams?
In not In Fashion. It's the one with the red dress, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
She loved it. About this dress that's like violent, so that with that kind of stuff. So
In Fabric.
That's my point. In Fabric. I said Inseams. Oh my God. Close. But with that as an example, I personally feel like there's something for everyone. So just with that being said, but yes, of course, with Get Out for sure. And I remember, there were a lot of people who were like questioning, Jordan Peele on that. But if you guys watched, Key and Peele,
You're right.
There were so many horror elements in the show. Like, of course it was a comedy, but he'll put little things in there, little nuggets where it's just like, oh, okay, you do like, genre movies. So yeah, that's my long answer for you.
Horror
I just think it's interesting. Yeah, no. The reason why I asked is because I feel like every once in a while I run across folks who seem like they have that like encyclopedic knowledge of film that I wish I had in my brain. It seems like both of y'all have it, which is really, I don't know, it's kind of nice. Because
we talk a long time when we talk.
Yes.
No, that's awesome. I think that's great. I've been writing down names of movies over here on the side, like as you guys have been talking.
So I honestly feel that genre started to fall apart, and the new liberation that we have is Joss Whedon. I think Buffy the Vampire Slayer was the first shot across the bow. And as much as can be said about how layered that show was and how it was funny at times, it was sexy at times, the central piece is the big bad. The metaphor is all about the big bad. It never stops being about monsters. It never stops being about the plight, the weight of being a vampire slayer, the one who can do all of this. And it got really deep, and it allowed itself to get deep. Whedon, instead of sitting there just going, well, we're going to have a musical episode, and from now on, we're just going to do like what Star Trek sometimes did, where it became so fan wanting to make fans happy that it wasn't even really science fiction anymore. But that show, he said, no, we're going to kill mom. We're gonna have mortality take over. We're going to have the sister go bad. We're going to have all of this stuff happen. And so we have a little bit of soap opera, but we're also there for the horror. And it was horror that was accessible to people who did not like horror. My wife watched Buffy religiously. She watches Supernatural religiously. I don't watch Supernatural. I gave up on that.
Supernatural, yeah.
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 But in the beginning, it was magnificent. And all of these things, horror and genre, X-Files, these things have been slowly chipping away for a while now at the preconceived notion that this was all greasy kid stuff. You know, back when there were 3 or 4 critics that told us exactly what all genres were. We don't have that anymore. We have maybe too many critics. Like anybody who has a keyboard can be a critic, and that might be an issue. But I think we started seeing a refinement of horror earlier than Get Out in going. I think you really start seeing around Devil's Backbone when you have Guillermo del Toro. People are watching subtitled horror, and it's accessible to everybody. And people love the ghost story, and they follow him. And they start looking back at Kronos. And so in the Dead, when horror seemed to be dying, when it came back stronger. So in the 90s, everything was a thriller because of Silence of the Lambs. The serial killer was the only thing that you could have. And the occasional movie that had something. You had the low budget horror suddenly come back up with Glass Eye Pix, Larry Fessenden doing Habit, and the movies that came out of Glass Eye Pix where you have Ty West and all these guys. That was happening. You had movies like Open Water, which, you know, has this, that came out of nowhere. And it was this movie that caused, you know, an uproar with people, but it was made for no money. Once you have Blair Witch, that's also something that starts turning the wheels. But somewhere in the 2000s, I think something happens when we have a major trauma, where we're just a little bit more. I don't really agree with the thing of that horror thrives when times are bad, because no matter what time you're in, it's bad for somebody. You know, it's maybe bad for me right now, but it was bad, you know, for other people during the Obama administration. So what does that mean? So I don't know if it has anything to do with sides. I think it has to do with something that is much bigger. Like, I'm waiting to see what happens now that we've had the world pretty much stop for 6 months. But prior to that, 9/11 and the housing bubble breaking and all that after hubris comes nemesis. And our nemesis is the anxieties that we have and where our horror goes. And suddenly we have people speaking that weren't getting movies made for them before. And so I think it's really kind of interesting. I think it's been going on for a while, and Dread had been coming up for a while. I think Dread really started coming into vogue at 7. You know, I think that Fincher brings Dread, and we start to replay that Dread in different ways. And I think it's wonderful because it allows for elegant storytelling. And Ari Aster is just he's reminding me of Polanski, hopefully only in the way that he does Dread. But that whole thing of he's the guy, right? You know, he's the forefront of the Dread movement.
I have a quick question for you guys. I'm just curious. What's a movie that you watched lately? You know, a new movie. It could be new, it could be old. That, you know, really just you really enjoyed, stuck with you.
The last one that completely blew my mind and that I recommend to everybody and I take punches in the face for is Martyrs. Martyrs, absolutely.
I just saw that movie also. My partner, we just started seeing each other, and I've been trying to slowly get him into horror. And he was like, we watched The Exorcist first, and he was like, that was amazing. And I was like, well, what did you like about it? What did you not like about it? And after talking for a little while, I was like, you know, I actually really like kind of those gory. Have you ever seen Hostel? And I was like, yes, we can watch. And I was like, well, maybe we can marry this in some way. I was like, there's this thing. It's like French horror. We're going to watch this movie called Martyrs. I know it's got gore porn in it. You'll love it. And I'll love it because it's a French movie. So it's got to be refined in some way, right? Oh my God. I like by the end of that movie, I was like standing cleaning the house because I was trying to like watch it but like not watch it. You know, when you do that thing where you're like, I'm not gonna watch it, but also I've already committed to this movie. I might as well watch it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Oh, that movie was rough, man. That
Yeah.
movie was
It
rough.
is. It's very rough.
Yeah, it's an amazing film to me,
It's
though.
amazing.
It really it revitalized where I thought horror could go, and Lagier hasn't come up with a movie even close to its equal, but I give him a lot of credit for that one because it just really
Yeah.
it speaks to so many different things, and some people can't stand it, and I get it
Yeah.
completely, but too bad for them. So, do you have an answer, Em? What's yours?
I mean, we just saw Martyrs, and we rewatched The Exorcist and Hereditary, and those were all just amazing. I'm trying to think if I have any kind of like newer movies that I've seen that I actually liked. I'll have to think on it. I'll send one to you if I can find anything. I've been actually horror has been really intense for me in the pandemic. So I've actually been watching some of my favorite old horror movies that are a little bit less that are like I rewatched Exorcist 3 and like just things that are a little bit more like the jump scare isn't scary because I know exactly when it's going to happen because I've seen it 10 times.
Right.
Yeah.
That's great. Let's end strong. We talked about those kind of movies. Let's talk about an obscure horror film that you would highly recommend to people that they have to see and defend it.
I have one because I remember so I studied abroad in Paris when I was in college, and there was this tiny little theater around the corner from me when I was there, and they were playing this movie, and a friend of mine was like, oh, we have to go see it. The critics say it's really good. And I watched the entire movie without subtitles. So to this day, I'm still not quite sure half of what was happening, but it was called Le Prochaine fois je veux pour la tête, which is like the next time I'll go for the head. And it's about France's first serial killer in Marseille in the 70s. And it is a phenomenal movie. I won't spoil it because I won't spoil it. I will just say that it is a great movie, and it's a French horror thriller, and it's about this man who's like, it's from the point of view of the killer, and he's slowly going insane, and it's really good. I highly recommend it. But I've not really ever met anybody else who's seen it. I think it might have just been released in France.
Yeah, I don't know that one.
Yeah, I haven't heard of it.
I'll have to look that up.
It sounds awesome. I'm going to go with Eckhard Schmidt's the German the German movie from the 80s that I was so obsessed with, still am, and it's basically about this young girl, teenage girl, and she's very moody, and she's in love with a pop star, obsessed with him. She gets in fights at school because she feels like they need to be together. They belong together. And she's she really is, she just worships him. And she finally meets him. And I'll stop there to avoid spoilers. But it really did take me for surprise. And I know, Em, you were saying how, a movie that you would remake. I would totally remake this movie if offered, like, the chance to do it, which I don't feel like it needs to. But, if it needs to be done, I am available.
Awesome. The one that I'll give for myself, I'm going to break from my normal thing and go with a TV movie. And I will say that it's one of the greatest TV movies I've ever seen, and it's Dean Koontz's Intensity.
Oh my God! I was no lie. I was going to say, but okay, I'm like yelling because you don't understand.
Such a great film, right?
Intensity.
Yes, yep. You guys didn't ask me, what's something that you watched, Xena? So I was like, okay, whatever. But I was going to say that because I recently watched it. It is such a great mini series.
Yep.
I'm sorry.
No, it's fantastic.
And I wrote it down.
Yeah, that's as good. That's better than anything that I could have said. Your reaction, because I tell people about that movie all the time, and especially if they like high tension, I go, no. Yeah, yes, high tension, no.
Blown away. Like, okay, a friend of mine, Justin Steele, shout out to him. We do like this monthly YouTube thing called the Rabbit Dog's House, where we talk about, just different movies. And I remember I was tweeting about watching What's the movie?
Intensity.
No, not Intensity.
Oh, High Tension.
Thank you. Just flew away.
Yeah.
Yes, I was tweeting about it because my husband said, "Oh, I've never seen it." I was like, "What?" I wanted to bless his life, right?
Uh-huh.
So he watched it. He liked it. You know, my friend Justin, he said, "Hey, then if you really like this one, you need to see Intensity." Never heard of it before. Never heard of it, and and he kind of gave me like a backstory. I'm sorry, I'm like taking your thing, Scott.
No, this is great because, like I said, I can't do much better than what you're saying. I love it so much because first off, I feel they ripped off Intensity by making High Tension. High Tension is a pure, thorough ripoff. The first half hour is.
It is. I'm like, there's no words because it's like it's literally the same thing. So it's just like, I feel like if you really love High Tension, and I know some people that like, I really liked High Tension, but I hated the blood. Okay, then you should watch Intensity.
You should watch Intensity because that's what I love about Intensity is that first off, it's one of the greatest villains ever.
Oh my gosh.
Vess, Edgeler Vess. And he's wonderful because he's not only creepy, he's also very human. He's anal and all of this stuff. And it just feels so real. But it's a story about intensity, the idea that sensation matters more than anything else. And you have a survivor who beats that. The idea, I get choked up thinking about how emotionally powerful intensity is. It earns that last shot. That last shot is so amazing because you have the idea of the predator is not strong. The victim is the one who has the strength. And it's just this amazing story about how he's all about sensation. You know, I don't even wear gloves because I want to feel the body cooling under my hands. And a police officer can come in at any moment. That's intense. I feel sensation. And she's like, you're an idiot because she's already done all this. She could have run away and she can't run away because she cannot allow someone to feel the pain that she had. And she's going to risk her life. She's scared to death and she's going to risk her life to save this girl. Fuck.
Powerful.
Yeah, it is.
And what I found interesting with this villain, usually it's kind of like, oh, well, the reason why I'm doing this is because blah, blah, blah. He didn't have a reason.
No.
He liked the thrill. And it's just like no type of like background. It was about, you know, the main girl and how she's sick of being a victim and she wants to, you know, like you said, help this young girl. Like, seriously, just if you haven't seen this, like, you really just need to like check it. It's so excited. Like, I'm gonna
this is like a glowing review. I'm gonna go make sure I can watch it like right after this.
Yeah, it's so intelligent.
You guys are like,
yeah.
You guys need to write reviews for this miniseries.
Yeah.
I would do it in all caps. Watch it. And it's like, it is 3 hours long, but seriously, it doesn't feel like it at all. It breezes by.
The dialogue is cracking. The acting is fantastic. And it is heartening. It is a movie that is very sadistic. If you think about what's going on, it's a very sadistic and brutal thing. And it is so elegantly beautiful. It is so emotionally true and strong. I felt uplifted after watching. And I remember like watching like with the dogs, I was like holding on to the seat going, because you care about this person. She's so real. She's so fleshed out. And Molly Parker, she ended up being on Deadwood. I don't know if she's worked on anything else other than that, but she was so good in that. I was like, yes. So anyway, I know I apologize that I've taken you guys a little bit longer, but this is what happens. This show is supposed to be a recreation of those hours after the convention has ended. The bar is closing. We say, fuck it. We're going to get some chairs. We're going to sit in the hallway. That's what this show's been. So I'm really grateful that you guys came on and had some cool, passionate conversation.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me. And I would love to see your movie.
Yeah, I will send you the screener link. I'm happy to. And yeah, I think that this Women in Horror was a great festival. It was like the last festival that I was able to go to before quarantine, and I got to meet such amazing people. So it worked out beautifully. But yeah, thanks for having us, Scott. This is great.
Oh, not a problem. Is there anything that you guys want to pump? Like, you got anything coming up? Hint, hint. Like other places that your movie's being.
Yeah, my movie is playing at Horror House. They are doing a virtual screening, so it is a 3-day. I don't think I have necessarily the details yet, but I don't think badges are too expensive because it is a virtual screening. So please buy badges, watch Cleanse, watch a bunch of horror movies, be happy. And also you can buy my book on Amazon. My pen name is M.Burger. And the title is You'll Never Believe How These Kids Get Murdered and Other Clickbait Tales.
That's the best title.
Yeah. Xena, how about you?
Well, you guys can find me, social media, because, who am I? But I'm always on Twitter all the time, and it's just Lovely Xena. And then on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, Real Queen of Horror.
Wonderful. And to everybody who's been watching me and Vanessa over the last couple of months of the pandemic doing this kind of crazy stuff, thank you for watching. It's been a real joy. I hope we get to do it again in the future. And everybody who stuck around, thank you for being out there, being a wonderful peanut gallery, giving us your conversation. And until next time, stay hellbent, everyone.